Check it as well.
Great. Sorry. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Keenan. Jessica Chait and I are co-chairs of this committee, Chelsea Land Use, which usually meets monthly, and this is our January 2023 meeting. As per the mayor's orders, we have been meeting remotely, and this meeting is being recorded and is currently live streaming on YouTube. It will be there if you'd like to check in later and watch it again for all of eternity. The agenda for tonight is public and can be viewed on the CB4 website. We encourage you to sign up for eBlast to get the agenda. And if this is your first time at a Community Board 4 meeting, there are some things you should know about the process. First, after each presentation, the committee will ask questions to the presenter. Then members of the public can ask questions or make a comment, and subsequently the discussion goes back to the committee. On some agenda items, committee members may next vote to make a recommendation, which usually results in a letter for the full board to vote on. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment after a presentation and after the committee has spoken, please press your raised hand button on your screen and we'll call on you to unmute. Usually this is on the bottom right, or if you're calling in, use *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If anyone has any questions regarding what I just shared, please raise your hand now. I don't see any hands. So I would like for us to very quickly introduce ourselves. We have a very busy agenda tonight. We have 4 agenda items, and one of which is our final recommendations for the Bayview RFP, Bayview Chelsea RFP. So Jessica.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm home with the flu, so I'm going to stay off camera and be listening from bed, but thank you to Carrie and in advance to all of you for your understanding. And I'm co-chair of Chelsea Land Use. Sorry.
Tina.
Tina DeFelicia Antonio. I live between I'm on West 26. I live between 6th and 7th.
Thanks. David.
I'm Dave Holoka. I live on 19th Street between 9th and 10th Avenue, and I'm also on the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee.
Thanks, David. Marty? Can't hear you.
I'm Marty DeCat. I live at Penn South. And I'm co-chair of the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee. David, I'm so glad you're on it too.
Thanks, Marty. Hector?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Hector Vasquez. I've lived in Chelsea for about 30 years now. Started out at Elliott Chelsea Houses. I am now at Fulton Houses, where I'm part of the tennis association, and I'm happy to be here to represent. Thank you.
Thanks, Hector. Paul?
Hey, everybody. Paul Devlin, former co-chair of Chelsea Land Use, currently co-chair of Hell's Kitchen Land Use, so I'm the crossover patron.
Thanks, Paul. Pamela?
Hi, I'm Pamela Wolf. I live in Chelsea.
I think they might be the side of my bed.
Tina, would you mind muting?
I think Tina needs to mute.
That's okay.
It's all right, honey. Again, I'm Pamela Wolf. I live in Chelsea on West 21st Street between 7th and 8th Avenues. I'm a public member of CB4 and a member of this committee.
Thanks, Pamela. Just for 1 second, I see Viren is in the attendees section, Jesse. I don't know if we can bring him over. Bert?
Hey, everyone. I'm Bert Glaswin. I am on the corner of 24th and 10th, and I've been on that corner for about 40 plus years. I'm also co-chair of the Business License Permits Committee, Liquor License Committee.
Thanks,
Welcome.
Bert. Thanks, Bert. Brad?
Good evening, Brad Pascarella. I live in Chelsea, 22nd between 9th and 10th. I'm also on the Waterfront Park and Environmental Board. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Brad. Mike? And Mike, welcome back. Mike, are you there? Okay, we'll go to Viren.
Hi, I'm Viren Rambert. Live in Chelsea. I'm on CLU as well as on Transportation Committee. I'm an architect, urban designer, if that helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Viren. Mike, are you there? If not, we'll hear from you later, I'm sure, and we can just keep going. So I'm going to go right to agenda item number 1, which is 435 West 14th Street, an LPC application to replace retractable canopies with permanent metal and glass canopies. We met with the applicants on Thursday of last week, Jesse and I, and it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Taylor, Jamie Nicholson, and Charles Thompson to present.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'm Jonathan Taylor with Higgins Quays Barth Preservation Consultants. I'm joined by my colleague, Cass Dackelberg, Charles Thompson from Architects Cetra Reddy, and Jamie Nicholson of Rock Hill Management, who is representing building ownership. We're here with the landmarks application for 435 West 14th Street, which is on the north side of 14th Street between 9th and 10th. This team and I personally have had the privilege of presenting applications for this building in the past to this committee, including a 2017 certificate of appropriateness for a canopy at the building entrance and bracket signs at retail storefronts. And you can see that approved canopy in place in this photo. That canopy was proposed at the time to mark the building entrance for the offices inside. The team is now looking to enhance the pedestrian experience on 14th Street with the canopy along the full length of the facade. A full-length canopy will be in keeping with the historic full building canopy that it historically had and reestablish the building's visual cohesion with the historic district, which is, of course, characterized by canopies. 435 is a market building that was constructed in 1914. In this historic photo looking west along the block in 1931, the building is here at the right with a canopy all the way across it, which of course is typical of the canopies prevalent along this street and throughout the district on such market buildings. The 1940 tax photos show multiple canopies across most of the building, as well as a variety of panel and blade signs, both on the building and on the canopy, which again was characteristic of the historic market activity on market buildings like this. These designation photos, at the time of designation, the historic market canopies were gone, but there were a series of retail canopies at some locations on the building, non-historic retail canopies. Some existing photos show you, first of all, the approved canopy at the entrance. You can also see on this photo to the right that there are historic intact anchors for tiebacks for canopies. They are intact at every pier of the facade, and those anchors would be reused to suspend the proposed canopy. And here on the photo at the left, you can see on the 4 westmost bays, there are 4 non-historic retractable awnings that would be replaced as part of this project as well. So just for reference, this is the 2017 rendering for that application for the entrance canopy, as well as the blade signs for the retail establishments. Only one of those blade signs is in place. Sorry, I should have had a better photo of it, but I'll just enlarge to show you one of them in place right now. But that was the rendering for the application at the time for the full complement of bracket signs. And then, sorry, here is the proposed new metal and glass canopy going all the way across the building with letter signage contained within the front edge of the canopy. The blade signs to still be there, but sitting underneath the canopy. And again, the tiebacks to the existing anchors. From an initial discussion with LPC staff, it's our understanding that the bracket signs probably meet the current rules for staff approval, but that's something we're hoping to confirm as we move forward to a public hearing for the canopy. but we just wanted to show you the full proposal right now. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Charles to just walk you quickly through the details and the materials.
Hi, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, can you switch to the next slide? Keep no, this is the existing.
Right, sorry. Thanks.
So here's the proposed elevation. And just a little background, I've been working on this building since I think 2013. So we did all the we replaced all the windows and storefronts. This is the new canopy we're proposing along the entire frontage. It's predominantly made of steel with corrugated glass. We do have some signage at the leading edge proposed of stainless steel pin letters. Next slide. There you can see the scope of the existing canopy on the left, and then the full dimension of the canopy on the right under proposed. There are some photographs of the glass that we're proposing, but essentially it's steel structure projecting out from the building with a sort of C channel at the edge. On the left detail, there's a detail of the signage, which would have a little bit of uplight to it, so it would backlight the steel that the lettering would be seen in profile. The steel itself would be painted black, and then there's also a downlight at the building face in the canopy, pointing down, and one sitting on the canopy, sort of pointing up to highlight the piers, the stucco piers. Next slide. Top left is a photograph of a canopy in the neighborhood at 401 West 14th Street, which has a sort of historic corrugated glass. We proposed a sort of modern laminated corrugated glass for the canopy itself. And then there's some cut sheets of the different lights. The one on the left is the one that would be pointing up at the building, just at the piers. The one in the middle is pointing down, which will really be hidden by you won't really see that light it'll sort of blend in with the structure. And then there's a very small light on the right, bottom right, that will uplight the leading edge of the canopy. You won't be able to see that either. Next slide. Sorry. And this is a detail of that leading edge of the canopy on the left, where there's a very small strip light uplighting the structure itself with a stainless steel pin letters, elevation of those letters, and then a drawing of the blade sign. Next slide.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in here just to take note in terms of the choices of materials. With the corrugated glass, these are some examples of historic canopies in the district which are corrugated metal. Obviously, we're proposing to have a glass canopy that will allow light to penetrate, but the corrugated texture will recall these kinds of corrugated metal canopies. And we can see here some examples of recently approved versions of that in the district, where I think that's been a success. I also want to know one thing about the proposed canopy, which is a little different from the one that was approved and is on the building right now. That one has a little bit more cladding around the framing, and it looks a little bit more modern. It has flat glass and sort of slightly thicker members. But we're proposing something more like these with the open channel framing, which will look a little bit lighter with a canopy that's going all the way across the building, and also is a little bit sort of closer to evoking the historic textures of both the corrugation and the steel framing. And that's the presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I just have one question, because I was there on Saturday, I think, and I had to go to the Apple store, and there is an existing canopy right there at the end of the block, which I think you may have showed a picture of. And I'm just wondering how this is different, because I took a picture of it and they look very similar. Is it the same?
The same as?
At the end of the block on the north side of the street, like sort of right outside the Apple store.
So this one here in this photo is 401 West 14th Street. Is that I think that's the one on the Apple Store building. This is not directly next door, but it's to the near to 9th Avenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nearer to 9th Avenue, yes.
Right. So Charles, I mean, maybe you can speak to similarities or differences in terms of the design. I mean, aspects of this are similar in terms of the corrugated glass and the aspects of the framing, although I think, you know, it looks like this one, maybe the glass is kind of raised up over the framing a little bit more. But Charles, do you want to, I don't know if you're, how well you are versed with this.
Yeah, I think that, I guess we maybe have just a little bit fewer members. I don't think we're as deep as this one either. This one, I mean, I don't know exactly how far it projects out, but I'm just looking at Google Maps right now, and it looks like it projects all the way out to the street line. So
yeah, you see the bus stop sign here. So I think it's definitely a lot deeper. Ours isn't it?
Yeah, we're at like just under 9 feet. This is probably, I think the sidewalk there is quite wide.
Yeah.
So we're probably half that.
I'm just wondering, what's your point of view on, you know, as hopefully some more buildings try to do this as well and kind of bring back the streetscape from, you know, back in the day. Would you want them to look the same, or would you want them to all look different, or like what? I'm just wondering why this takes up a good amount of the, well, maybe a quarter of the street, and you're going to take up, I don't know, a third. So yeah, it's just a question.
I mean, maybe we should speak a little bit about, you know, why we were initially doing this. And this is a particularly kind of wide street with a lot of sort of facades that don't have them anymore. And we're really trying to bring back that sort of character. So I think having the long, you know, these long canopies, it sort of harkens back to the photographs that Jonathan showed earlier. I don't, you know, I think that I think it's good to have them with a similar language. I don't think they need to look the same, but I think having them, you know, built out of sort of more industrial type materials, raw, as opposed to the, you know, more modern, is, I think, in keeping with the sort of character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, yeah, I mean, I think the building blocks will often be similar, the pieces and the materials, which is what you know, would have found historically, but that, you know, the buildings themselves had different, you know, different heights of where they were mounted. And you can see right here that these two neighbors are, you know, have different situations on the facade. So I think there would have been, and there will be, I think, you know, you're not going to have a uniform between buildings all the time, I think, situation, which I think kind of, you know, is a little bit what you see in the historic situation where there is some, you know, the different facts of the different buildings make for some variation in the facade, but still, you know, what the designation report calls a visual cohesion between the fact that most of them do have them.
Okay, great, thanks. I just too want to mention that I'm not sure if I missed it, and I apologize if I did, but you were going to add the trees to the rendering that you have there, because
yeah, I think the problem with adding to the rendering is just for the purpose of this review and for Landmark's review is we just didn't want to obscure the proposal itself in terms of the canopy. I mean, there are.
For this committee, would you mind just speaking to the fact that there are trees and planters, and because I think that was, you know, something that we're very interested in.
The frontage of the building does have a series of approved planters. The trees don't show up super well in these winter photos, but there are trees as well as lower plants in the planters. I believe that this was an application that was brought forward by the bid rather than by the building. But that is the presence on the street here.
Okay, thank you. Dave, do you have a question?
Yeah, will the trees interfere with the new canopy at all?
No, they don't. They are out. Like I said, this is a very deep sidewalk, so our canopy is only coming off under 9 feet, so they're not conflicting.
Okay, and I think you said there were uplights on the piers. Is that correct?
Correct.
They're mounted to the canopy top, and so they're not mounted to the building, but they would wash the piers.
But just at the piers, yeah.
And they're at each pier. Okay. Thank you. That's all. Nice presentation.
Thanks, Dave. Paul?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm excited to see this modern interpretation of, you know, what's historically identifiable as meatpacking district awning. So it's exciting to see this. The question I have is the current canopy, is that going to remain in place as it is and these extensions will be added on? Or are you taking down the existing canopy and then making one uniform canopy across the length of the building?
It'll be the latter. We'll be removing the existing canopy and replacing it with the design that you see here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I see Bert.
Yeah, hi, thanks for the presentation. Somewhat still, I have a question and a comment, or maybe two questions. Does the canopy you're proposing go all the way out across what you describe as a deep sidewalk? Or does it go halfway across the sidewalk, 2/3? How would you say that?
I think if we should scroll to there's a plan view that shows it.
Well, I wasn't able to read it.
Oh, it
Yeah.
doesn't show the
Could you
sidewalk.
say it in English?
I think it's halfway. I'm just trying to look at the survey right now. The sidewalk here is at least 16 feet, I think. So let's say half.
So these are going out 8 feet.
Yeah.
Estimated.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a dimension on here. I think it's just
Okay,
under.
thanks. And now my question is, the functionality of the canopies when we're taking out meat and putting meat away, or freight to cover the distance between the truck, the loading and the unloading, I understand. Looking at 1931, looking at whatever we had there, 1914. What's the function of the canopies now? I can understand the function of that first one that you did back a couple of years ago, defining where the entrance of the building is. But what's the function of having a canopy all the way down the street?
I can speak to this. It's Jamie Nicholson with Rock Hill. I'm representing the applicant. I think from our standpoint, the function is really to improve the pedestrian experience on the street. The scale of 14th Street, this property sits on the north side with a wide sidewalk. There are a few trees, but very little shade. There's quite a bit of traffic, as everyone's familiar with, and it's open to the sky, and it's quite a large expanse of the sidewalk that's unprotected, and particularly in summer months or even in a rainy or cold, a rainy or snowy, fall or winter. The pedestrian is either baking in the sun or soaked with rain or snow. And so we think, it'll provide a little bit more comfort to the, pedestrian to the shopping experience, or to the, pedestrian experience for people walking by. And then it'll also help, kind of create a more human scale on that large block, where there's a lot of, expanse and sky exposure. I think the canopy kind of brings the scale down to a more pedestrian friendly level. In addition to that, I think our objective, the project was originally approved in 2017. There was some question around whether both buildings, because this is two separate tax lots, were going to be improved. And, I think in retrospect, we would have done a larger canopy at that time had we known what we know now. And so part of the function is to go back and right a wrong from our perspective.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for that explanation. It really sounds good. I don't know, for me, it probably would enhance everybody's experience. I don't think it would enhance my pedestrian experience, but maybe I'm just a curmudgeon of the neighborhood. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bert. Brad?
Unfortunately, Bert, you might be the curmudgeon. I think it looks great. I'm on the Meatpacking District bid, and there is talk about, and I'm sure you might have seen those drawings. They've done the study of making an island down the middle of 14th Street, making it much more tactile and alive, because the retail dies on that block. So I think anything to enhance it, I'm all for. My question is related to the signs. Is it going to be, there's no LED where one can be pink and one can be blue to distinguish the different type of retail that could be down there. I just would prefer it would be all the same.
I think the plan is for just ordinary
White,
uncolored lighting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, the backlight in the channel will be all one consistent color. That the actual fixture will be not visible, but the light will wash the back of the signage. That'll all be a consistent stainless steel, and it'll be washed in a consistent color of light. And then the downlighting beneath the canopy is going to be consistent across the canopy. We'll be installing all of that. I think the variation is going to come hopefully when we lease some of these vacant storefronts, you know, as far as what, you know, retailers install in the interior of their stores will provide the visual variation, but the signage next year will be consistent across the property.
So my point, Chair, would be that we have a note saying that the signage light will be all one color and it will not change. Otherwise than that, it looks great. I think it's going to be wonderful. Thank you. What's your time frame?
We're going to go in front of the LPC in February. And at the same time, we're finishing up construction drawings and getting pricing from a contractor. So we would anticipate upon receipt of approval and a fully bid out construction set, we could install the canopies in anywhere from 16 to 20 weeks, we think is the construction duration. So in an ideal world, we're, you know, installing these in the late spring and over the summer, and they'll be there before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. I took a note. Pamela?
Yeah, hi. A couple of questions. First of all, I think it's a good thing you're doing, and I like it. I would have liked to have seen the canopies extend entirely across the sidewalk, as the originals must have done. I'm glad to see that there's glazing that will let the light come through. That's a good thing. I'm curious. I see that in the profile that there is pitch toward the building, not away from it. So there's no drip edge across the front. But where are the leaders that will take the rain runoff away? Are they buried inside the building somehow, or
Yes.
I don't see any physical presence there that would allow for that.
That's
Is that
exactly
just
right. I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, you're correct. It's pitched towards the building. So drainage is going to be accommodated by drainage in the piers, which will connect into the building, the stormwater drainage system, the same system that drains the roof.
So you'll be penetrating directly into the piers rather than just bringing it inside and then a pipe down. I suspect that the originals were pitched toward the street.
They were. I think they. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not
Okay.
permitted under code to drain to the street, so we actually need to capture the stormwater into the system. Is why we've designed it this way.
That does make sense. Too bad otherwise you'd be watering those trees. The only drawback from having the canopies extend all the way out to the curb line, as the originals must have, is that there would not be any trees. You would not be able to have trees there in that case. So I'm hoping to see lots more trees appear. We're all for green around here. I had one other thing, which I can't remember what it was. So I guess I'll let it go.
I can come
Thank
back to you, Pamela, if you remember.
If
Thank
the
you.
If the bell rings.
Yeah, well, Hector is going to speak, so maybe you'll remember by then. Hector?
Yeah, I've got kind of an oddball question, but as you know, we do have a kind of a large population of pigeons in the community, you know, along with a couple of seagulls and some other wildlife. What are you guys going to do to prevent them from, you know, hanging out up there and doing their thing? Because honestly, I think the Highline has issues in some other areas as well underneath, and it looks like this would be an ideal place for them to, you know, hang out and make a mess and, you know, cause issues. Any kind of remediation?
That's a great comment. It's not something that we've thought about yet, to be totally candid. I think there are probably, you see them a lot on building ledges, anti-pigeon spikes that we could install on the top of the members, so they're not visible through the glass to help mitigate that. And then, we clean the windows here several times a year. And so as part of our window cleaning contract, we'd probably add a, cleaning of the canopy to address any pigeon, from obscuring the light coming down through the canopy.
Thanks, Hector. Was that it, Hector?
Yeah, I guess that's the best we can ask.
Viren?
Yeah, my hand went up because I heard the word spikes. I think that's a very bad idea. I mean, we've become very human-centric, but I think birds have a place in the city as well. So I think some better ways of kind of looking into how you will keep the place clean and still allow the birds to hang out would be a better way to sort of approach it. So please, no spikes. And the second question I had, you did mention a lot about lighting, which kind of is very nicely done. I wasn't very clear about your uplighting for the piers. Is that going to be at the base level, or is that going to be from above the canopy, or both?
Yeah, you can see the light right here, sitting on the.
Oh, whoops.
So it's uplighting from beyond the canopy, and below is all lit up with the canopy lighting. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have a downlight, this linear slot LED here that's sort of black painted next to the steel tube. It sits in between the members, and then on top, between the piers, there's an uplight.
That's good. Thank you. No, that answers my question, but please consider not putting spikes.
Thanks, Viren. Brad?
Yeah, I meant to ask, where's on the drawing, the drain, where's the water going? And then I'm going to ask one more question. Is it possible to have rippled glass solar panels? I'm going to ask it.
So the answer to the first question is we have leaders going down in through the the building. Yeah. Yeah. So those happen. We have to do each section, there's certain sections. So I think we have 1, 2, 3, like 4 leaders at least. And then I don't know, Jonathan or Jamie, do you want to address the solar panel?
I'm not familiar with that option. So I feel a little flat-footed answering. I can't speak to its feasibility or appropriateness for a historic district either, without seeing what it looks like.
Brad, did you have anything else to add?
No, but I think we got to start asking those questions. One,
Yeah,
Marty, we always ask where the water's going, which is clearly going to the sewer. It's because some of these canopies don't, which is good. And yes, I think we always got to ask now, landmarks or not, about green energy and where it's coming from and what could be done.
So that said, would you be willing to at least look into that? I mean, I'm sure it would benefit you as well to know, right?
Yeah, we could look into that.
Great. Thank you.
And just so you know, in the past, Chair, we've said yes to everything in this building. We said yes to their roof. We said yes to their deck. We said yes to the, we've been much in their corner. So it's always good to ask.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Brad. I'm sure we all do. Thank you. Viren?
Just quickly add to Brad's point, there are glass panels available with embedded solar cells, and they could remain clear. So I think you should really definitely look into that. Just a suggestion.
Noted.
Great. I think we're pretty well done with our questions. Jesse, is there anybody from the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Sorry. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second so people can, we all can see each other.
Brad, I assume your hand is still up from last question. Yeah.
We don't have anybody with their hand raised in the attendee section. I think we can come to a consensus.
Great. Would anybody like to try to formulate that consensus / motion? No.
Where's Paul?
Motion
Paul's
to,
very good at it.
Wait, sorry. We have Brad. We have Brad. Go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say our former chair, Paul, is very good at usually wrapping that up.
Paul, would you like to make a motion?
I
I'm
make a-
pretty sure it's a straight approval, but
Yeah,
we would
I-
love to have you look into the solar panels. Let me sum it up. If you could look into the solar panels that would, somehow match the historic district nature of the project, that the materials that you've already selected. I have the note about the signage for our letter. I believe those were the only two things. We would love more trees.
I was going to say protection of the tree pits.
Yeah.
And canisters.
And just so you know, it's not just one voice about the solar panels. I didn't say anything, but I'm sure there are others that agree with what Brad was saying on one.
So we're going to make a motion to approve the proposed plan to extend the canopy the full length of the building, removing the existing canopy and extending a canopy as proposed with corrugated glass and metal, with respect to potential investigations into solar panels and bird and fowl remediation programs, as well as protecting our tree pits and tree canisters along the sidewalk.
Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Pamela, that was not an opposed, correct?
No, that was sorry.
Okay,
I
got
had
it.
my hand.
No, present not eligible? Abstaining? Thank you very much for coming and sharing that with us. We really look forward to seeing it. And if you can send us a quick note after you do that, that research and let us know what you found out, that would be really appreciated on the solar panels.
Thank you very
We will
much.
do
We'd love
that.
to be more proactive about this, all the time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
For your
you.
time and for your support. Thanks.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bert, I
Okay.
don't want to see you underneath that canopy, Bert.
Bert, you have to stay on the,
Bert, you got to stay
the
by
part of the
curb over there,
sidewalk that
my
is
friend.
not covered.
I'm going to take the rain and I'm going to take the heat. I'm going to walk outside the canopy.
All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is an LPC application for a proposed entranceway modification, including the front entry door and surround, the brownstone base course, entry door drop material, and restoration of stone lintels of 343 to 436. I feel like I wrote that down wrong. West 26th Street. The applicant can correct me. I apologize. I was taking notes very fast. We met with the applicants, Rebecca Brook, the architect, and Jeff Preston, the owner, on Thursday of last week. And I'm happy to turn it over to, I think Rebecca was going to take this to go through the presentation. And just one note, we did receive a letter from the West 400 Block Association in support of this application, which is good. So Rebecca, can you just confirm the address? I'm sorry.
Yes, do that.
That's okay. It's at 434 to 436 West 22nd Street.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. I can go ahead and share my screen then.
Yes, you can.
Please.
Okay, can you see?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you everyone for joining tonight. As they had stated, my name is Rebecca Broke. I'm the architect and representative presenting our proposed renovations for the 434-436 entryway at the base course. This is a photo of what the building facade looks like today with 434 and 436. Our work that's being proposed is occurs at the front of the building, and the building is between 9th and 10th Avenues. Here are the historical images of our existing building. 436 is the most noteworthy of the two. It is known as the Edwin Forrest Mansion, and it was built in 1835. Edwin Forrest was a well-known American actor, and he purchased the home in 1839 and lived there until 1852, and the building subsequently was sold in 1856. The building then saw a myriad of other residents, ultimately landing with the Drummond family, who sold the building in 1939 and also acquired 434 at that time. Unfortunately, in 1946, both 434 and 436, which were single-family residences, were converted into multifamily tenants with multiple apartments throughout each building. And at that time, the entryways were moved to the basement, the stoops were removed to better access the layout of the interior units. Here's a photo of the existing conditions here. So you can see our two lowered entryways. Something else to note was that the original color was white at the time of the conversion, and at some point after designation has changed to this forest green color. Also at the base course, the ornament was removed and the base was leveled to be continuous all the way across. Some more photos of the existing conditions. You can see that the updated entryways that were converted in 1946 are in a mid-century Greek revival interpretation. They're squatty proportions. There's much to be desired. And even though it's for a multifamily unit, it's really lacking a lot of that grandeur and that elegance that was provided when it was a single-family residence. You can see that the lintels and the sills were painted during this time, and part of our proposal, which I'll touch on shortly, is to restore the brownstone that had once occurred here and remove the paint. You can see our squatty entrances here at 434 and 436 as well. Our proposal, as previously stated, is to bring back some of that elegance and that grandeur of the original architecture of the building. We are using the existing conditions that we have today, so as we don't to disturb the interior circulation of the unit, of the interior, to access the units. You'll see here, so that's part of the reason why we are not proposing to bring back the stoops here. We're going to keep the entries at their exact same size, at their placement at the lower level. The historical entryways had pilasters and simple pediments above them with a deep recessed overhang, so that way it created protection from the elements. And we would like to bring back a similar condition using a new overhang above the doors on either side to help improve that experience for the tenants. The building is currently undergoing some renovations to several of the units, so it's just as good a time as any to help give a facelift to our existing facade. We're hoping to bring back some of the original details by adding in these pilasters on either side, which have expressed chamfered joints on either side, and then a brownstone pediment, in addition to new doors and a faux transom panel to help increase the proportions and elongate those elevations similar to what we had in the historical conditions. So this way we don't have to change any of the openings here, but we're getting an elevated experience compared to those squatty proportions that we were working with previously. If you see here, this is a page that describes the existing neighborhood context. So you'll see our neighbor directly to the west is at 432. It has a similar condition of those pilasters, a simple pediment. And then our door, while we don't have the same opening width as some of the other homes on the block, once again, we're playing with proportion and to be able to bring relate to some of the neighbors there. So you'll see we have 2 panes of glass as opposed to the one that was there originally. And we're also proposing a black color here to mimic much of what the language is of the neighborhood, as the forest green is not historical. You can see similar overhangs to what we are proposing down the block at 404 to 408 West 22nd Street as well, along with a similar language of the expressed joints at the base course as well. Here's a comparison of the existing to the proposed, and just identifying that we are not changing any of the openings or the placement. We're working with the conditions that we have so as to not interrupt the interior workings of the building. Overall, you'll see here, mostly nothing is changing at the upper course of the building. The majority of change is all here at the base course. As previously mentioned, we will be restoring the lintels and the sills to their brownstone character and removing the existing paint that is there. Here's the proposed elevation. The existing and the proposed. Here's a rendering of the building. So you'll see we have the black paint. The windows will be painted black as well. We have our brownstone lintels and sills, and we're retaining all other historic features surrounding the windows and the upper course of the building. At the base as well, our door drops are in disrepair, so the existing stone is deteriorating, and we're proposing to replace this with a vintage slate stone to complement the black doors that we're proposing as well, and elevate that entry experience and provide a consistent experience for both 434 and 436, as opposed to the existing patchwork that you see here. And then again, just as a summary, you'll see we have our browns. We're returning the materiality at the entryways to brownstone in replacement of the wood, adding overhangs, playing with the proportions at both of the entryways by adding in a faux transom panel. And then we have a close-up of the existing, the proposed, and showing what that overhang experience is going to feel like. 434, 436. And the existing here, and this is what we are proposing. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much for that, Rebecca. I just think it's good to note, as I mentioned, we did meet and reviewed this last week, and the owner actually lives in one of the units in one of the buildings. So it is owner occupied. We'll take some questions and comments, starting with Dave. David, do you like Dave or David? I've been meaning to ask. Okay, I'm gonna try really hard to do that. Dave.
I think it's a nice improvement. Very technical question. How will you make the faux transom simulate transparent glass?
So we are using a frosted glass material there.
I'd ask you to look into using double glazing with perhaps laminated obscured on the inside and transparent on the outside. It might give a better sense of depth and do a better job of looking like actual transparent glass.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Betty?
Yeah, hi. I may be out of step on this comment, but the proposed look for the front door and its lighting strikes me as modern, and the old look strikes me as more historic, and so we're more in line with the older history of the building. So maybe I'm missing the boat somewhere, but could that be explained a little more?
Sure. So our proposed lighting is, it harkens back to the historic gas lanterns that would have been found. It is cleaner than some of the other, than the existing that are there. But we can take that comment into consideration, and we will review that with landmarks.
I think, Betty, I think you're also asking about the actual design of the door frame as well.
Kind of the whole look kind of just looks more modern to me. I guess the two kind of rectangular lighting things, I didn't know that they're representing gas lighting. I didn't get that picture, but it just seems like it's like streamlined kind of and not having the kind of detail that older buildings have, but maybe I'm missing the boat here somewhere.
Here, if we look at 4.3, the entry at 432, we have, it's a very clean elevation here. So in terms of the original pediments were not very ornamented, so everything is very linear. We tried to keep a lot of that same language here and added the corbels similar to what is historically found everywhere else, in addition to, like I said, those expressed joints at the pilasters.
Okay, well, let's continue on.
Okay.
Thank you, Betty.
Thanks, Betty. Brad, and then Pamela.
Well, Betty, I picked up on the same thing because above the door in the new proposal, it's only two pieces there, right? And if you look at the other ones where the red door is on the right, there's a much more detail there to distinguish it on the brownstone. And on the block where the steps go up, the brownstone's against the brick, and then the doors inside are a darker color. Here it's a bit bland, and I don't know if it's just because of the rendering, but I think we're talking about, we want some more detail on that piece above. I think should be looked at. My other question is on the entrance at 436, you've got the doorbells, the buzzers. Is that going to be the inside so we don't see it? And then obviously you've got not a landmark fence, which would be love to see if that could be changed to match the rest of the block. I'm literally standing outside the building right now. I happen to live next door. Would be something I'm sure we'd like. And then I'm always going to ask about the garbage. Is the garbage going to go inside now? Or are you going to build a non-landmark box to put all the garbage in? Because right now it's just out in regular garbage cans behind the fence.
Right.
So a couple of those questions.
We're happy to take into consideration some sort of enclosure for the trash there to make it nicer than the existing solution. And I'm sure that's where garbage has always been, but we're happy to make that look prettier for the street as we're improving the rest of the facade as well there. So that's
Can you speak to the fence, Rebecca?
The fence and more detail on the above the door.
The fence is not slated for replacement in terms of the scope of work for that. We're just planning to repaint that and fix it up as it functions just fine. We will take that into consideration though and review that with landmarks.
And a more detailed design above the door. If you look at the other one where the red door was, you could see there's just more detail. Here, you're just giving us, at the corbel. You see there's much more detail there. And I think that's what Betty's saying. She's looking at the door and going, it just looks too modern above.
That
it looks like, like the more like trim. And I think we're looking for more detail there.
Sure. Here, let me go to, so more steps here than what we currently are showing.
Yes, because now you just have two. So it's really probably just another molding piece to show a little bit more detail there.
I think add an extra trim. I hear you. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad. Pamela?
Well, I think it's a big improvement over existing. I think the tablature, the existing over the doors, is inappropriate. Although it does look more colonial, maybe. But I think the style of the rest of the block is federal, and what you've done is that more that look. I agree with Brad about more detail, and Betty about more detail in the horizontal portions. I think the corbels are a huge improvement and an addition. If you take a walk around the corner to 21st Street, 409 and 407 and 409 were in the same condition, two buildings, and under my watch some years ago, we did exactly the same thing that you're doing just to give it some greater presence and a better sense of the history of the building. It's unfortunate to have lost the high front stoops, and it is a shame that this owner isn't eager and anxious to consider replacing at least one of them as a high front stoop just to break up, because they are clearly two separate buildings, and they need to read as two separate buildings. It's a shame to lose that. It just gets more monolithic this way, and I would certainly prefer to see one of those two guys have a front stoop, a formal high front stoop. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. Brad, I'm not sure if you had another question or your hand is up from before. Okay, seeing no other hands from the committee. Jesse, are there any other members of the public who'd like to speak on this? Hold on, let me look.
Sorry. No, I apologize. I was on mute too.
That's okay.
Even a pro like myself. Yeah, no, there's no hands in the attendees section.
Okay, so I'm going to try to be. Oh, Paul, would you like to summarize, please?
I'd like
I
to
was
make a
going to
motion.
try to be like you, and summarize, but it's better if you just do it. Actually,
It's up to you, Carrie. If you want to
I'd
summarize.
prefer. Go ahead. I have my notes. So
I was just less prepared on the first one because I didn't think I was called upon, and this time I tried to make notes. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the applicant as proposed, asking them to give consideration to additional detail at the portal, especially along the horizontal line to increase the steps, as well as to take into consideration a double pane glass to add more depth at the portal.
Sorry, can I just clarify one quick thing? When you say increase more, you mean steps in the corbel, you're not talking about the front stoop, right?
The pediment, right?
The pediment.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
Add something about garbage management.
I want to
Yeah,
add about the garbage,
Yeah.
and I would love to get the gate to match kind of the rest of the block.
So Paul made a motion. Is there a second to Paul's motion, or do we want to add? Sorry, do we want to add we can add the garbage comment? I think the gate maybe we should take as a separate thing.
No, I think we should put it on there, right, Paul?
So you're saying that we'll only approve this if we ask them to replace the entire gate?
No. I would ask them for just like we're asking consideration of the glass, the double pane glass. We can ask for consideration of alterations to the fencing and gate to bring it more into historic standing, as well as to incorporate trash systems that would be respectful of the historic nature of the building.
Yeah.
That work, Brad? Brad's muted.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Musician taught my brother's sister and I.
Anyone opposed?
And most people aren't gonna remember this, but there was a show.
Present not eligible?
Wow, that's sort of neat.
Abstaining. Great. Thanks so much for coming, Rebecca. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, 428 West 22nd Street, an LPC application for a 1-story rooftop addition and a 2-story rear yard addition to a single family dwelling. Currently, this house is unoccupied. We met with the applicant again on last week of Thursday and asked them to provide the DOB status of no objection regarding zoning. Jesse, did we get that?
I don't believe so, but I thought they included in there the slide that they had showed us during the presentation, but I might be wrong. Philip?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, we
so
can.
let me introduce
Perfect.
you, Philip, real quick.
Thank you. Mhm.
This is architect Philip von Dolling, and he'll begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, my name is Philip von Dalwijk. I am the partner of von Dalwijk Architecture and presenting the landmark application for 428 West 22nd Street for our applicant. And just to get that first question out of the way, since it's important, yes, Jesse, the zoning or non-zoning objection is part of the presentation. Yeah, so we'll see that in a second. All right. Do you guys all see my shared presentation?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Great. Oops, let's stay there for a second. So 428 West 22nd Street, it's on the South Street on 22nd Street. As Carrie pointed out, it's currently and was for a while a vacant building, which my client, our client purchased. And I think it was a good year or so vacant. My client itself lives on 17th Street and 10th Avenue. They're part of the community. It's a family of 7. So they have, believe it or not, 4 kids, grandma and 2 adults, which hope to make that into their new home. The application is a vertical and horizontal addition to that existing building that needs public, where we hope to receive public hearing approval, and then some landmark stuff approval items, which consider the front facade. And I'm trying to, we'll mention both things, but I will try to keep it apart for considering everybody's time. We're here, you see the Chelsea Historic District map in the upper left corner. Right above is the text map.
Philip,
And below,
I'm not sure that unless somebody else is seeing that the slideshow is being advanced, we're still on the first page.
Ooh. Okay, that's strange. Is that for everyone the same?
Yeah, it's the same situation for us, Philip.
Okay, let's try that again.
That's better. Thank you.
That's better. Okay.
Yep. Now it's there. You go.
Okay, great. So again, historic district, upper left corner, right corner text map, and below you see a bird's eye view of the block itself. Probably most of you, as I realized listening, you're all Chelsea pros. You see the diversity of the block itself with multiple story buildings, additions, and extensions. We'll go a little bit further into exactly that. But first, to introduce the building, here are our viewing map. 3 photos from the front and 3 from the donut itself. Left is, I believe, 424. Then 426, sorry, that's a little bit different. Yeah, 426, 428, center is our building, and then 430 to the right. So these are our neighboring buildings. That is our respected rear. Left neighbor with an unusual addition within the rear yard. Both neighbors have extensions. You see then further 424, which has, I think it's a 3 over basement plus roof extension. Here we're going a little bit more into the details of the donut itself, since we are planning a rear extension, so that part is probably very important. Buildings in general, so I'm reading the key map on the upper left corner. Roof extension, slightly darker hatched. There are multiples within that block, 4-story plus basement, which means these are considered, they have 5 stories in total. We are all familiar, basements. They're to a certain amount above the sidewalk or your rear to be habitable. Then there are a good amount of 3-story, 2-story, 1-story plus basement additions within that block. Our property line is here rendered in red. Then you have little dashed lines which show each. Let me just see how I can zoom in here. That might be difficult. Okay. Hang on for a second, since that will be. Jesse, do you know how to zoom in on your? That's what I didn't want to do.
Control plus plus.
Plus plus. Yeah. There should be a zoom item. Okay. I mean, hopefully it's clear enough that I don't have to zoom in, but that's not great. But anyway, so the idea is that we are showing the rear side from all the buildings throughout the block here, which are interesting and somewhat have certain features within that block. Important are where I'm pointing at right now. That's our direct rear building. That's a 6B building, so 6 floors over basement. Also, there's a 4B next to it. 4-story and basement with a 3-story basement extension. Our direct neighbors have a 1B with 3B regular building, and our left neighbor, seeing from the street side, has an attic extension. That's, I think, what we, Jesse, what you were referring to. So on the right side is our DOB objection sheet given by our expediter, which shows no objection in regards to zoning. That was reviewed by Landmark. So also give some background, our current status. We are working closely with Jared Knowles and Stephanie Grout from Landmark over the last months, reviewing our application that the commissioners will approve it. On the left side, you see our zoning. It's an R7B. We have a lot area of 1,800 square feet. It's an FAR of 3, which means our FAR can be 5,407 square feet. Existing floor areas 3,544, and we are proposing 4,771 square feet. Front yard 0, rear yard currently 41, required 30, proposed 32, 33 feet roughly. Below that, the building is built in the assembly of 424, 426, and 428, Greek revival style in 1843 for James Fallon. And then there are certain details which don't play directly into our application. They're more about features which were observed regarding the entrance and framing and door at the time when the committee met in 1970. Center of that page, it was built as a private dwelling, means a single family home. Again, in 1843, and certificate of occupancy came later in 21 here. That is our left side, is our zoning site plan. You see the neighboring buildings, so 430, 428, 424, our roof extension and rear extension. On the right side is the zoning envelope. So here the max zoning in this area is, or at least for us, is 75 feet. The base height, which we are proposing, is 38.5 feet. Our building height is the peak of the building, since we are proposing a pitched roof. It's 53 feet, which could be extended to 65 feet, which we are not planning to do. Going further into our block and into what we are currently finding, and I hope this is pretty, let me know if I have to zoom in here or there to make that more apparent. We are seeing here in red, with the red line, that's 428, our building, our proposed roof pitch. We are seeing the variety of buildings and extensions within our donut. As a whole, oops, that's the same what happened before. And go to the next slide. Just hang on for a second to share again.
Well, real quickly, Philip, just a moment. Just everybody, I was able to get this, I apologize, this revised presentation in your Dropbox too. So if you want to be able to pull it up on your own computers, be able to look at it close. So.
Here thank you, Jesse. The top presentation here is the rear yard perspective, showing our neighbors left and right. It's a good amount of extensions throughout. Sorry, I didn't want to do that. And then the lower part is showing what we are looking at within our rear yard. So there you're seeing the 6B directly across and a 14-story multiple rear yard extensions over the course of time. Here is a section through the block. You see our landmark sightline, the roof extension, and then rear yard and our building across the 6B. That is what we have currently, 3-story basement, rear extension, existing rear extension, existing deck within the rear sideline, and a bulkhead on a 60 wide street. That is our proposed extension. So we are staying out of the sightline. Our roof extension will be not visible from the street. We are stepping our extension slightly back from the rear cornice to keep the existing roof line, and planning to renovate and restore the existing cornice, exposing the 3rd floor elevation, renovating the existing brickwork, and then having a 2-story plus basement extension, replacing what we currently have within the rear. That is our current section here. And I'm happy to go further into detail if needed. And again, at this point, I mean, it's important to know that we are, and that's why we don't currently don't have zoning objections, because we are in the DOB within, we are having mechanical, structural, and that scheme in the DOB for the last probably four months or so. These are probably very hard to read, and I'm again happy to zoom in once the presentation is finished. These are the existing floor plans. These are the proposed floor plans. So we are proposing here 2, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, and then the regular one family program with basement, which is the garden floor, with a kitchen dining, then first floor entrance, small office, living room, second floor, 2 bedrooms front and rear with bathroom at the center, third floor, similar bedroom and smaller bathroom, and then fourth floor is master bathroom and a front terrace. The roof, as I mentioned before, is a pitched roof that has, and I'll just jump back to the section here, that has multiple reasons. For once, and probably you're all probably familiar with the code, is that we are asked to provide solar panels or a green roof. We decided, and that has a lot to do with to be energy conscious, how we as architects work on these existing brownstones and townhouses, try to get them as close to a passive house or zero energy building that we want to implement solar panels. The solar panels need a certain pitch. You probably see that throughout the city, that roof structures are set on top of buildings which are not part of the fabric which we find. We are trying to integrate that into the roof itself, and did that in the past successful, which means we don't need additional structure on top. We try to use our roof itself. Secondly, a pitched roof lets us, we do not have to provide a parapet on our roof, as usually a flat roof would require of 42 inches, which means we can lower our height. And thirdly, we don't have to provide a bulkhead, which would also generate additional height on this building. And lastly, and that's actually important, our mechanical systems, which you actually don't see in this section because they're well hidden within the roof itself. So sorry, this shouldn't be here. So let's go into the front elevation. That is the street front. The lower part, which means what you're seeing here rendered in brick, and the windows and the door, there is certain scope there. I don't know if you want to hear more about that, and I'm happy to talk about this. It should be, and it will be, a staff approval. Very briefly, we're changing the windows for the upper 2 floors to 6/6 and the lower one 6/9. And the door itself will be renovated. Means we're keeping the door which we're currently having. And the new roof extension will be not visible from the street itself. That is our rear. The rear here, you see the extension, you see the exposed brick, the existing renovated cornice. We're keeping the same, for the 3rd floor, we're keeping the same window openings, where we're extending to your right, looking at it to your right, which means to the east, the door to serve as a balcony or terrace and maintenance door to that area. And then the lower 2 floors, 2.5 floors, which means 2 and 1 basement, are the extension which are replacing what is currently there. And then these, sorry, I have to jump back here. These are the materials which we are proposing. So roof material is a standing seam metal roof, interlocked shingles. The solar panels are directly attached to our roof scape. The standing seam metal we're proposing, it's a darker gray, which is a reminder which we see. Maybe I can dial back to 424 and other buildings to what was used at the time, kind of shingled slate. Then we have a cornice railing color here. That's just a Benjamin Moore Black HC 190. The rear facade, the existing brick to be restored, and then the lower part will be two different stucco finishes. The window, again, it's hopefully a zero energy building, will be triple pane windows. Therefore, you know, the frames itself will have a certain thickness similar to what we are showing here. And I think then ultimately the last photo, it's here again, back to the street. That is the our 3D rendering of what you will not see, basically where that sloped pitch roof will sit when you are in the street itself. And I think that is kind of the end of the presentation here.
Thanks so much, Philip.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll go to questions and comments from the committee. So Dave?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'll start with the windows. Do you have historic photos that show that there were 6/6 and 6/9?
So what LPC pointed out, and you see it here also in that photo, the neighboring building to the left was recently renovated, and there they used 6/6, 6/9 Greek revival style. The idea is that we are matching that, or we're asked to match that.
Okay, and these windows will be triple glazed.
That's right. Yeah.
Will they have authentic divided lights?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So we
Okay,
have now, we're in the finally one of the vendors. So triple glazed, you're probably familiar. There are very few vendors who can provide that, right? There's finally one company which operates here in the state, which has landmark approval to for historical use, which we will want to use. Yeah.
So the mountain width, the exposure that you see is, it's not overly thick because of the 3 layers of glass?
Say that again.
The width of the mountain, we're just looking at it from outside. How thick would it need to be, given that it's holding the 3 lights of glass?
I mean, I'm not sure if I can answer that, you know, in a professional sense, right? Knowing, I mean, that's a question about 1/8, 1/4, ½ inch. So it's tough to say. I have to pull up the detail for that.
That would be good to see. I'd like next to go back to your building section.
Let me see if I can do this here. That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me if the cellar will be lowered at all?
No, the cellar will be not lowered. There's no underpinning, no lowering of the cellar, no nothing like that. Nor does the extension has a cellar.
And what parts of the building that are existing will be retained?
The entire front facade and the 3rd floor of the rear facade.
Right, and everything else is new, correct?
All floor heights are existing. All floor joists are existing, cellar is existing and to be kept.
Okay.
Which means when I go into, probably this shows you that a little bit better, what will be maintained.
So you're retaining the original timber framing structure, at least where you can, because you're introducing a new stair opening throughout the height of the building, correct?
And that the new stair opening is placed where the existing is.
Okay, I'd like to return to discuss in general, but first give other members of the committee a chance to ask questions.
Right now, David, I don't see any other hands up, so
Okay, I mean, I have to say this is the kind of presentation that I like to see least, because aside from, saving a bit of the top of the rear floor, none of the exterior envelope except the front facade is preserved. So it's very close to facadism. And, I often criticize houses like this for not reflecting the actual history of row houses. They're more a reflection of the history of what the Landmarks Commission approves. And this one is literally shaped by that line of sight from the opposite sidewalk, which is very arbitrary.
Can you say that? Can you say that again?
The actual profile of the house, this cross section, is actually shaped by that line of sight from the opposite sidewalk. So the house is becoming something that's really quite arbitrary. It's, the shape of it. It has nothing to do with historic additions to row houses. And Philip, can you tell me if the existing rear addition, what age that is?
The rear excerpt, it's hard to say. I mean, we couldn't find it on, let me just see if I find the photo. We couldn't find it on any historical maps. I believe it's done, or Landmark told us, probably done in the 70s. So that wooden structure here is an addition which came later than the original building.
Okay, I thought perhaps it was a 19th century T-porch which had been enclosed.
We had a landmark. Actually, we're working with a landmark consultant, and that was discussed, and it's absolutely not the case. So we looked at the structural members of it, and you would agree when you would see it, it's done something very sloppy, in the 60s or 70s.
Okay, and I understand that 7 people will be living in this house, but it's already really quite a large house. It's providing over 600 feet per person as it is. The Landmarks Commission is not supposed to take things like that into account. Just looking at the existing and the proposed rear elevations, it just strikes me that the character of the back of the house is completely transformed. I don't know if we could go to those elevations.
Sure. I mean, just a note on that. It's more, I think in Chelsea, there's quite a bit of development, and I understand where you're coming from. I'm making this point to mention the family because it's not a developer, right? It's different. It's somebody who takes on a building which was changed from a one-family home into compartmentalizing it into multiple kitchen floors, bedrooms, and basically inside there's very little left what has any historical, relevance. And they're taking that on as a family to make it their home, to stay in the community.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of a radical difference, and I kind of lament the loss of those quirky dropped windows on the right that are probably where the stair was located. And the Landmarks Commission prioritizes what can be seen from the street, but it in fact has purview over the entire exterior shell of a building. So, they would be within their rights to ask you to preserve the entire rear. They probably won't do that. I think we've been pressing the Landmarks Commission to entertain additions which only pop out at the parlor and basement level, and only by about 8 or 10 feet, which historically was the kind of addition that you would see in a 19th century T-porch, some of which became enclosed. And I dislike the idea of creating yet another precedent for a new house that's a completely different animal from what was there before. I'll also point out that you're cutting away floor space inside between the basement level and the first floor to create a double height space. So, part of this rearward projection is to create a very non-historic double height interior space. And this only invites outside developers to assume that they can demolish everything but the front facade and a few bricks of the top floor rear. And it creates an irresistible financial incentive for the hollowing out of the entire row house district. So I would propose that we send a letter to the Landmarks Commission saying that this needs to go back to the drawing board, and that we would entertain a proposed rear addition, or projecting the parlor floor and basement back 8 or 10 feet. It would involve the demolition of what is there and replacement with more permanent construction. And ask the commission if they would be happy to see every single row house in the Chelsea Historic District given a treatment similar to this, which would completely transform the character of the entire district. And I think it's important that they start to realize this isn't about incidental alterations that come along, but because of the financial incentive they're creating, they're really driving this to happen throughout the district. And at that, I'll hand things off to Pamela.
Thanks, Dave. Pamela.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It's my turn. Thank you for the presentation. I agree with much of what David has had to say. I know it's a much broader topic than just this one house. I want to say this is not the first time that this committee has been at the rodeo with a presenter who presents as a family. I mean, forgive my cynicism, but this is the third time, and the other 2 times were absolute, basically bald lies. I don't know how we defend ourselves against this. Maybe we should have them come meet us or something, but we've been burnt twice already by this, once at 404 West 20th Street, and again at 460 West 22nd Street. In both cases, these were families who came, they wanted to send their children to the local schools. They had both sets of the grandparents that needed to live in the house and with the families, and therefore, and all of it was just a storytelling.
So yeah, but let me just jump.
I'm sure these people are wonderful, and they deserve this house, and they deserve to live in it like they want to. I'm just saying, okay, we need to be really, really careful on that one. I don't understand. I don't know how we do it, but we should.
I mean, these are people who met their neighbors, met their neighbors there. They live on 17th. No, okay, you're not sure.
Okay,
that's why I'm saying that. You're not sure though, but
okay, so I just have to agree, Pamela. I think that we can't,
yeah.
I understand. I understand your point. You're right. I've sat through a lot of presentations that you're absolutely right. But I don't know how we, make an accusation against somebody that is not provable.
I'm
or
not making
probably
any
true.
accusation. I am saying that we need to be careful.
Which is why we generally, write the kind of letters that we write. And
okay,
then
as far as
lose to landmarks. So
I would, as far as the rear facade of the building and blowing it out the back, I agree with David that it should only be as tall as the top of the parlor floor and not as deep, 8 to 10 feet deep into the donut hole. I'm curious to know why, if there's exposed brick for the upper floors, that they plan to clean up the brick and then put stucco on it, which I find unpleasant to look at and not necessary if the brick has been properly attended to.
I don't mean to cut you off, Pamela, but I genuinely would love Philip to answer that question about the stucco. Why would you make that stucco?
Fine, interrupt. I'm done.
Hitting that brick, because I think that's a really good point, and it might help, create more of a feeling of more historic fabric. Yeah.
I mean, Pamela, thanks first of all for your comment, and I appreciate that, and I share that concern. as well. I feel a little bit hurt because we are not this kind of architecture office who would portray something which is not true, right? So I'm working here with a family.
I don't mean to offend you.
Yeah. No, you don't. You don't know, but I'm saying very honest, right? I want to be plain and honest here. This is what it is. And in general, you're right. I think also it's a good lesson also that I think it's important that the client is part of these presentations, that we also know who we are kind of, dealing with. But anyway, back to your very specific question. So we are not proposing any stucco over brick, right? The top brick is what it is, right? We are saying we're cleaning up that brick because it's currently painted. And we want to bring it back to what our neighboring building is revealing, which was supposedly built at the same time. The lower floors are stucco, and that has something to do that there's no brick behind that, right? This is the new facade, the 2 floors below. So there's no stucco over brick or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it.
Of course, we can discuss if it's better. And if the building fits better into the fabric of that very diverse rear yard, and that's why we spent quite a bit of time analyzing that rear yard, if the lower floor should be brick as well and not stucco. And there are different opinions within the committee between Landmark. I went through that many times, that a new addition should look new. It shouldn't be portray something old. But of course, I mean, when you find the right brick and match it, that could be one way to maintain what we are proposing here.
Thanks, Philip. Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times on this committee, when we have these kinds of extensions and rooftop and rear yard extensions, our concern is about the impact on the donut hole. And we have had numerous debates over many of these applications about, what is important to us and how do we preserve the historic nature of this community, and making sure that we don't bump out farther, we don't bump up higher, which causes detriment to the donut hole. In this situation, it seems to me that there is no further bump out. It is the refacing and internal changes to the building. And the rooftop extension, I'm surprised somebody didn't request something like a flat roof instead of a pitched roof, or make some alterations. So I personally am not in favor of suggesting they go back and knock off a floor of the existing structure, because honestly, I don't think that's what LPC will approve anyway, so would be kind of wasting our time. Instead, I would like to see us maybe make some proposed changes that would be more in line with our past recommendations, as well as in line with what we would like the donut hole to be like. So perhaps requesting a brick facade. I mean, Philip just mentioned there's debate about whether the facade should be brick or stucco. We tend to support brick facades ourselves, even if LPC debates it. I also think that perhaps we should request the rear windows, as Dave points out, the stepped down windows, the odd placement that reflects the interior stairwell. Maybe request 6/6 instead of single pane as proposed. And so I'm kind of more in favor of what we typically do here, is to make tweaks to this to make it fit in better with what our own goals are for the historic district and our own goals are for the donut hole, rather than trying to make a case study for a single family. And again, David, you mentioned facadism. I think this is the perfect example of anti-facadism. We have a single family home being converted for the use of a single family. And Pamela, I think that I'd like to find out an update on what happened at 418 West 20th Street, which was a single family home being converted to a single family home. So we do have examples of successfully negotiating with single family owners, redeveloping the property to fit in better to the community. So I'm not in favor of saying, send it back blank and knock down the existing structure, but I'd rather like to see some suggestions on how to improve this to better match our longstanding history of recommendations to LPC.
Thanks, Paul.
Am I
appreciate that.
misinterpreting
I'm sorry.
this?
Can I just ask a quick question? I want a clarification, because I agree with everything Paul said. except I want to clarify that the rear yard extension is a 2-floor extension, correct? So we are actually looking at another floor, another new floor. It's not just the parlor floor, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
You are
My
correct.
understanding is that, is it, Philip, is it an addition,
It's a 2-story addition.
2-story addition? It
Yeah,
isn't,
so-
it doesn't exist. I'm sorry, then I misread the.
That's
the
okay. I just
presentation.
want to clarify that because
No, I appreciate
think your
that,
points are
because-
really well taken, and I want to make sure we're being really clear, because that is a dramatic, that's a dramatic ask to lose one floor.
But all right, so I apologize, because my impression
okay.
was that the existing condition already had basement 2 floors. Is it the existing
Basement 1
structure?
floor, and the new
Basement and
is basement 2 floors.
Yeah, so what
Thank you, Carrie. That was
I think
my comment.
I think the donut here, or that drawing, explains also the neighboring condition. So we have a 1-story over basement currently, and then we are left and right 1-story basement, and then surrounded the rest by 2-story, 3-story extensions, right? So we're not proposing something which isn't there. But yes, we are proposing 2 stories over basement.
And you currently have 1-story over basement.
Yes.
So
all
then
right,
that said, Paul, what would you change about what you?
Right,
what
no,
you're-
I would say leave it as a 1-story basement and no second. This is typical of our recommendations. We would not typically approve a 2-story basement expansion. We would typically approve a 1-story over basement. So I would say if the current structure is 1-story over basement, and I apologize, it's my misinterpretation of looking at the presentation. I would say leave it as a 1-story over basement, and then work on the rear facade on floors 2 and above with a brick facade, do 6 over 6 windows, and match the 1-story over basement also with brick, not stucco. And I personally am not going to be concerned about the bulkhead on the top and the pitched roof. I think that the notion of putting up solar panels offsets the necessity for the peak on the front as well as the back. So I'm personally okay with that, but I'm open to discussion on that one.
Thanks, Paul. Pamela?
I just wanted
hasn't
to.
spoken.
I wanted to, Paul, would you consider we should request information? What is the depth of the existing built out at the back, and what is the depth of the proposed? It looks to me on the plan as though it extends beyond its neighbors.
It slightly extends over the back of the neighbors by 2 feet currently. Yeah.
But
And
what is the
that
current
depth?
The current depths. So we have. I would not. I don't know. I have to look that up actually. I don't have that on hand. Yeah.
What is the depth of the two of your neighbors on either side?
They are at 58 feet. The right, well, looking at that drawing here, the right side neighbor is at 58 feet. The other one is, I think, at 55 plus a deck. Yeah, so they're both with the deck of the neighbor. They're both at 58 feet.
I would definitely be happier to see this extension at least match the depth of the neighbors and not extend beyond them.
Thanks, Pamela. Dave?
If we could go back to that section drawing again, I think it might help clarify where the new addition is relative to the existing rear addition. The section where it's shaded, yeah, right here. So I think the part right under where it says 2-story with basement rear yard addition is an existing pop out, correct? So that was added, and the original sheer rear wall of the house is what's to the left of that. So we do have a rearward addition on top of the previous addition. And also we're building up on top of both of those, just to be clear. And Paul, on several occasions, you've made the point that it seems to serve preservation that a house is going from being divided into more than one housing unit into a single family house. I would say it seems kind of irrelevant to me, and it's certainly not the case when it results in a huge loss of historic fabric and a transformation that makes the house practically unrecognizable. One of my problems with all of this is that this is already a very generous house. There's no basis in adaptive reuse for alterations like this. This house would sell for a lot of money. It would be vitally inhabited and cared for, even if it weren't enlarged at all. I worry that developers out there watching this, if I was one, this would just be one more confirmation to me that I could buy any row house in the Chelsea Historic District and work around preserving the facade and a little bit of the top floor rear and make the entire rest of the site a new construction site and max out my square footage and flip it. And we've even had cases where developers have gotten approval for that and resold the houses for a huge profit without even doing the work. And this just, it adds to that. That's why I would like to limit our approved additions to what an old T-porch would have been. And if these are folks with 7 members of the family, why not just buy a bigger house somewhere? If we had a bunch of people with 15.
Dave, are you opposed as well to the rooftop addition? Because nobody's really spoken about that. And then I want to actually see if anybody else from the committee wants to talk. Is there anyone else who has an opinion on this one way or another? Sort of, it feels like we have 2 things on the table. One is, I guess, reject outright. And the second is try to, come up with some ideas that are consistent with some of the things we've done in the past, which is, I suppose, the rear addition to the parlor floor and basement, and then rooftop addition. Hector?
Yeah, I'm basically concerned as well as many of the other folks on the board. This has happened way too many times, and yeah, it does set a precedence that if we allow this to continue, then any developer or any individual can come in and just, reface the whole look of the community. And that's definitely what we don't want. We want basically to preserve what we have, because it is a lovely neighborhood. And honestly, if it gets out of control, you'll have a hodgepodge of some ugly buildings with some modern buildings and maybe a couple of preserved buildings, and it's going to really get out of control. So I don't know if there's some way we could start doing some sort of requirements when they do these redevelopments that that they have to live in the homes for a certain amount of time before they're even allowed to flip it, so to speak.
So I don't know. Just to be clear, appreciate your point of view. This is not a house that's meant to be flipped, according to the application. This is a house that's unoccupied that is a family is going to move into. So
I understand that, but we've had that same presentation before, where families living there. We've been through this, whole song and dances many times already. And
can I just?
And I'm not being accusatory. I've heard the response that I've heard your response, sir, and I appreciate that. And respectfully, we've heard the same kind of response from other architects and developers as well. No Philip, insult to you, but
okay, we're gonna just cut this now.
Yeah, okay.
Philip, I mean, before you respond, I just want to say one thing. And maybe this is not appropriate, but having now testified before LPC a number of times, I'm realizing that it doesn't really matter what we think should or shouldn't be, or what we wish were. It's almost like we can't start the precedent. We can only try to, I personally believe, minimize the amount of overbuilding and try to preserve as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, what LPC looks at is they say, oh, look at the neighbor to the left, look at the neighbor to the right, look at the neighbor across the donut hole, look at the neighbor across the street. They've already done it. Precedent set. So now when we look at an application, I feel like unfortunately we're in a position where we can only either, as Paul was saying, try to, ask for some conditions that make it, look and feel more appropriately like a historic landmark building versus deny, and then we just get overridden and we get nothing. So that's my point of view there, I guess. Philip, did you still want to respond to Hector?
Maybe not directly to Hector, but just also for the community and public, maybe who listens in or not, to renovate these buildings is not an easy task, at least not for my office and not who we work with, right? This is a planning over years who goes in there. There are multiple steps. There's client concerns, there's a budget, there's a timeline. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of historic preservation, even though you might not want to see that, but to exchange and renovate the building, the windows, the door, the brick, and all that to keep up with landmark demands. I think we have to give landmark credit for that. And secondly, from my personal standpoint, I don't see too many developers actually looking into these buildings, especially something like that, because that is not profitable as you think. It might be in some way out there, but that's not the general case. I think what you have to fight as a community. I don't believe that. This is a very, very long, hard way to make that work. And it's not a quick money in and flipping it.
Thank you. Bert?
Yeah, not being very nuanced. Okay, I agree with you, Carrie. And I think probably with Paul also. To just take the high holy ground and say no, 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 doesn't get us anywhere. It just gets us nowhere. This is unfortunately, whatever the reality is, this is not the first. This is not the first, and it's not the second or the third. Okay, looking at the block and the positions of the buildings and who's on top and who's moved to the left, who's moved to the right and to the back, there are many others. Okay, so I think what we need to do, and this is where I say I'm not nuanced, is to ask for certain kind of modifications and recognitions, not to say no, no, no. Ask for something specific and see if we can get something. And to bring that to the attention of the Landmarks Commission. So Carrie, when you go in next time and testify, you're being somewhat positive and somewhat, let's have a conversation here. Now, Landmarks may not want a conversation, but we do. And I think saying no, no, no doesn't lead to a conversation.
So what I've heard so far is sort of deny unless, and we still need to go to the public to see if there are any hands raised there, but I'm just going to put this forward real quick. Deny unless we have it's limited, the rear yard extension is limited to the parlor floor in the basement, that we'd like to see it in brick, that we would like to consider the step down windows in the back, 6/6 potentially. I'm not sure if I missed anything. So just keeping that in the back of your head, I would like to find out if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak. Sorry?
I'm sorry, just setting back to match the depth of the other buildings.
So that would be 2 feet less?
I think so.
Okay. Jesse, is there anyone from the public who has their hands raised?
We have 2 people.
Okay, great. And then David, we'll come back to you. I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk.
Missy and Wendy.
Okay. Missy? You have to just unmute yourself.
Yes.
Thanks.
Hi. Hi. I just had a couple of questions for the architect. On the solar panels, are they going into the grid or are they just going to power the house? Because I didn't think we were allowed to hook into the grid with solar panels. That was my.
Yeah. Currently, all solar panels are going back into the grid.
In New York?
Yeah.
And they're allowing that?
Yeah, it's the other way around. We can't have batteries in New York right now to harvest the energy directly on site.
Right, but our grid is not in any position to take power back. I thought I guess I'll have to look into it. I didn't realize that because we had looked into solar panels years ago and they just said the grid wasn't strong enough to take the power back.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. You're basically putting it back and then you're buying back energy from Con Ed or National Grid.
Yeah, but then the grid's not in good shape. Okay, and the 6/6 in the front, I guess I'm a little confused on that. Who asked you to put in the 6/6? Because my understanding is all that block is, the solid glass above and below.
Yeah, that's so most of the, at least the 3 buildings we are looking at, they were built around 1840. You will find that the text photo from 1940 shows what you're mentioning and what we are seeing these days, but that was already after the first renovation exchange of the original windows. So to answer your question, Landmark will approve that under staff level and probably will ask for the 6/6 in the upper 2 floors and the 6/9 on the parlor floor.
Well, they approve everything, so I don't put much stock in Landmarks, but that's just, I'm not part of the board, so I can say that there's nothing they don't approve in my experience. But so the original plans for those buildings all had 6/6?
6/6 in the upper 2 floors and 6/9 the lower one.
Okay, all right. It looks a little bit out of sync with all the other buildings.
Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, if you tell me different, and I'm happy. I was also
No,
questioning. But I was also
6/6.
questioning. I was questioning exactly the same thing and was
they're a
told
pain in
differently.
the ass.
Yeah.
Just to
Yeah.
tell the owners we have them and I mean they're pretty, but they're a pain in the ass. They're really hard to take care of.
Thanks, Missy. Any other questions? Okay, we'll go to Wendy.
Hi, just a quick statement or two. I've been listening and I moved to Chelsea, oh goodness, in 2008. And I'm just watching the neighborhood slowly disappear. And now the speeding of the disappearing of the historic buildings seems to have really sped up. I walk by 404 West 20th Street. I just want to cry when I look at that. And I kind of hate to see another bad precedence set by any more of these extensions, even if it's just 2 feet. If they could keep it within the same basic footprint, at least, of what's originally there, I'd like to see a little bit more preservation. And I also want to say, I agree with Dave a lot. So I'm going to let his words speak for me. And then I'm going to say thank you for hearing me and for paying such careful attention to this, because it affects all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave, for the final word, and then we'll have to have some kind of resolution.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I don't think that objecting to additions like this, and they're not really additions, is entirely futile, and that we're not heard by the Landmarks Commission. And I think the drumbeat that we've had over several years has led them to address these issues in their discussions a lot more than they used to. And I often see real dismay on the faces of commissioners when they see this kind of transformation happening. I don't think we're going to get them to change their whole approach based on one project like this. They're going to ignore most of what we say anyway. But I don't think that it's been a waste, and that even on Gansevoort Market, the 9 row houses that hold disastrous project, we got them to preserve a lot more of the original fabric behind the street facade as a result of a concerted effort. That's all I'd like to say.
Oops, thank you, Dave. I don't disagree. However, I do think that we need to move on. So I do think that my recommendation, and I cannot make a motion, would be to deny this application unless we, the developer or the architect agrees to the rear yard extension only being max parlor floor, so basement plus parlor floor, back 2 feet to match the other 2 neighbors on the left and the right. I guess, I'm sorry, I forgot the number. Was it 55 versus 53 feet? We said this, I would consider the step down windows 6/6 in the back and brick facade in the back. Paul, did you want to say something?
I'll make the motion to correspond to Carrie's summary of those points.
Is
I'll
there a
second. I'll second.
Great, thanks, Tina.
And I
all in-
also, and Carrie, I would like to request that in the letter writing, the logic is that our consistency in precedents of our own committee making some similar recommendations in the past.
Yeah, got it. I'm going to need some help with these letters this month, I think. There's a lot. So all in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Present not eligible? Abstaining? Thank you,
I'm
Philip.
opposed. This is Brad. I'm opposed. Sorry.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Brad. So Philip, thank you so much. I think you heard what we talked about when we met you the first time, that there's a lot of the same sort of stuff happening in the neighborhood. And we really thank you for coming and the attention that you are giving to this
Sure.
building. And we'll see you at Landmarks.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks so much,
thank you.
everyone. Thank you. Have a
Okay,
good night.
Thank you.
I meant to say I'm opposed, but I'm abstaining. I do not want to go against the board. I'm abstaining.
Okay, so you're abstaining, and I suspect it's because you would approve it straight up, right?
I just think,
I mean, I'm
You know,
only
I
asking,
just
I know
see-
it's late, but I'm asking because I feel like, we are going to keep getting these applications and we are going to have to figure out a way forward.
well, there's
Um,
multiple things that this board goes through, and I understand some other board members' points. But to me, to regulate the inside of a building that's a brownstone that's already been dismantled to what it was, I don't think it's our purview. I am not against the donut hole question. I just feel that, to Paul's point, we can't shove this whole thing down one person. It's a text amendment is really where it's got to be changed. And,
Yeah.
and we learned that a long time from our former chair, from Lowell. A text amendment is really the only thing to stop what we're all discussing.
So maybe to that end,
To me,
maybe
it's a
next
bigger
month,
issue to that,
yeah, maybe next month we put that on the agenda if we don't have a very, busy agenda, and start talking about what that looks like and what we can start to do about that.
That's, they said the only way we can change it is text amendment.
Yeah, I
So
hear you.
that's the only thing. And so
Yeah,
I'd
no,
like
I
to
think-
abstain. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate you saying that, bringing that up. Marty, last word on this? We're going to move to Bayview.
There is one thing I'd like to see creep into the letter that we produce.
Yeah.
Nobody has appreciated, and I certainly do, this architect's statement that it would be a zero energy house. And that is something that this board has been pushing for a long time. And while all the other comments are valid, we should appreciate that they have done that.
Thanks, Marty. Philip, is that accurate to say that? Just if we do put it in the letter, is that correct?
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Is it really zero energy, or is it?
We are,
Partial.
well, we are we are dealing with an existing building, right? So we are pushing to have a zero net building, and putting therefore a certain insulation, windows, and other means to lower the energy consumption. So that's the direction. Yes.
Is the correct
So
language
so
a
it will
zero
be
net building?
So it will be not a zero energy, but it will be a building who takes a step towards zero energy use. Is that
Okay,
a
got
better
it.
phrasing?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
The
that.
correct language is net zero.
Net zero.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay, thank you again. And we're going to move
Thank
on
you.
to our last item, which is Bayview, Chelsea. As everyone knows, this is our third meeting, I believe, on this topic. And we all voted during full board, or you saw the presentation during full board. And we're now hearing final comments from the public and our committee as we move to draft a letter in partnership with housing to ESD with our recommendations for their RFP. We've pared down the review of what was discussed and some additional pages specifically about zoning, since that wasn't really addressed in the presentation at full board. And we can briefly remind everybody what was there that is pretty much been approved. And then this will be the last chance for the public and the committee to speak on this before this letter goes out. So I know Joe is here, and I think we should bring him over. And Jessica and I just did a very pared down version of Joe's presentation to remind our committee what the points are, with a page on zoning of 2 things that we'd like to add.
Do you want me to display
Jesse, can you do that? Yeah, can you?
I can do it.
Okay, I'll just read through it really quickly.
You tell me, are you seeing it now?
I am. Next page, please.
Just want to make sure Joe has got over. Joe, are you here?
Okay, yeah.
Just got over. Yep.
Hi, Joe.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, we can see that. Thank you. The 3 main sort of sections that we're talking about are historic preservation, affordable housing, and community center. And then you'll see at the end of this that we added a couple points on the building itself, land use. So as you remember, there are a lot of things that we want to preserve. Next page, please. Here they are in a list. Currently, the RFP calls for historic preservation to the fullest extent possible. The board requests that ESD only entertain proposals from respondents, which include preservation, restoration, and maintenance of the brick and masonry facade, including multiple terracotta plaques, installation of historically appropriate windows and doors, restoration of building entry sconces, additions, if sought, which are minimal and consistent with the building character, preservation and reuse of stained glass windows, the mural and the commemorative bas-relief plaque located within the chapel. And we also note that the pool, gym, and cafeteria chapel should be preserved for reuse, that represent the YMCA's cultural legacy. So those are the preservation and restoration points. Please, if you have anything to add, just keep that and make a note of it so we can talk about it after. These were the affordable housing bands that Joe presented. Next page, please. So currently the RFP calls for 60 permanently affordable housing units. The board requests that ESD only entertain proposals from respondents, which include a minimum of 115 permanently affordable units, additional capacity for residential psychiatric housing of up to 30 units, office space for social work staff to support, and the respondent to work with the community, social service providers, and local not-for-profits to create this development as a model to serve multiple homeless populations. Again, please just look at these points. These will be in the letter. And if there's anything you want to add, just make a note of it so we can talk about it at the end. And finally, the community center. Next page, please. Currently, the RFP calls for respondents to provide opportunities for community facility use. We'd like them to be more specific and request that ESD only entertain proposals from respondents, which include utilizing the infrastructure remaining from the building's original use as the Siemens House YMCA for the community use, including the pool, the gym, and the large industrial kitchen. And then finally, some notes on zoning. As I think everybody knows, obviously we're Special West Chelsea. 8-story west section, 6-story east section, and sub area D and sub area B, but ESD has already told us that they're going to combine both to consider just them in sub area D with an FAR of 5. They are not going to get the additional 2.5 FAR from the High Line. They're going to instead potentially just override local zoning laws for a total FAR of 7.5. Currently, the building is overbuilt to have an FAR of 6, and it's over 100,000 gross square feet of floor area. So basically, ESD has said that, if you go to the next page, if the respondent furthers the development goals of the RFP, as in the 3 things we just talked about, they may or will grant a zoning override to increase the site's FAR to 7.5. And the board requests that ESD only entertain proposals from respondents, which include no market rate housing, 100% affordable supportive housing, and construction precluded on, through, or over the main building, no building in the courtyard. So those would be the 2 additional things that we so far are asking for. That is it. And I would love to hear what everybody has to think. Paul?
Thank you. Can I ask Joe clarification? The term permanently affordable versus permanently supportive and permanently supportive affordable. I mean, I think there is some interchanging here that we need to maybe look at. Because from what I understand, ESD has said that they will look at 60 supportive units, and we're saying 60 affordable units. And I want to make sure that our language is right there.
No, in our plan, it says permanently affordable supportive housing. And there's 2 flavors of that. One are the standard stuff we know about, which is the 60% homeless referrals, 40% community. That's the 115. And then there's the 30 units, which are actually a residential kind of program for the mentally ill individuals who are homeless, who need serious and much greater supervision. So everything is permanently affordable. Everything is supportive. There are 2 different levels of support. The 115, the standard, you have a lease, there is support services, you have a rent stabilized lease, you have support services, activities kind of stuff. The other one is much more supervised and much more intensive with a greater degree of support services. But it's 100% affordable permanently and 100% supportive.
Right, because the governor's letter that states that they're going to provide 60 supportive housing units. I just want to make sure that we're.
I think we're so past the governor's letter. We have been engaging with ESD on multiple meetings. We need to clarify. The governor's letter was a kind of a press release thing.
Yeah.
Now we're into execution, so we should just keep on saying what we want to get it clearer.
Right. No, that's why I just want to make sure that we're using the clearest language, because it's confusing the way it's currently written.
Yeah.
That it's permanently affordable supportive. I just want to make sure that it's aligned better.
I think when we get to housing, we're going to make this crystal clear so it carries through as in the joint letter we do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification. Otherwise, I'm glad with all that's in there.
Thanks, Paul. Dave?
Yeah, I've been concerned that our support for this project might amount to an endorsement of the Empire Station complex, which a lot of us have real problems with. You know, it was kind of tied into the Empire State complex in the station complex in the presentation that was made at full board. Can anyone address how it will be decoupled from that, if it will be?
I think, Paul, you are a member, correct me if I'm wrong, of the task force. Would you like to answer that?
I was on the working group on Penn Station. So just for clarification, and I'm going to use a term, GPP. There was an approved general project plan that initially had 0 housing units. We then negotiated to have 1,800 housing units with 460 or 25% being permanently affordable. That was not in the original plan. The working group got those housing units inserted. That GPP is the state's way and method of overriding local zoning. So that GPP was approved with those 1,800 units. Subsequent to that approval and that funding, the governor kind of threw a bone to the community because we've been talking about the need for supportive housing. We've been talking about the need for housing. And the governor said, ESD will put out an RFP for Bayview to have 60 supportive housing. That's the language that Joe and I were just debating. So it isn't really a part of the GPP for Empire Station Complex. It's a separate activity that ESD is saying to us, we'll do this for you. Much like right now with Empire Station Complex, one of the issues that we as a community pushed hard for was a public realm task force. That GPP is not really moving forward, but the public realm task force is moving forward. So this to me is not a part of the GPP. It's sort of a as Joe used the right term, it's sort of a press release. It's a feel-good thing from the governor. But this will move forward now, whereas the GPP is not moving forward at this point. For the GPP for Penn Station is not moving forward. So they aren't really coupled.
Will it be funded in any way by the GPP?
No.
So it's not contingent upon Empire Station Complex at all?
None. Zero connection.
That is good to know.
Except for publicity and goodwill by the governor.
How will it be funded?
I can speak to that.
Thanks,
There are 2 items. One is it'll be a 0 cost acquisition of the state land. That's a huge capital subsidy right there. And the second is that there will be funds coming from the Department of Homes and Community Renewal through their the state supportive housing program that will be available as part of this RFP. Very specific.
Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt. Joe, you used a term which I understood fully, but I think there might be some other people here that didn't. Describe again how the state is giving them the property and the value of that.
Okay, so in most city-owned properties that are done for affordable housing, they're sold for $1. So therefore, no land cost means you start out being able just to spend money on renovation or development. This property will be similar, sold for $1. There will be no land cost. The second thing is there are state programs for supportive housing. The RFP, the state's notice about this being available will say in it, and you will be able to access this supportive housing program, which is, $80,000 or $90,000 a unit. You can apply to that and it'll be available for this building, as opposed to saying, go out, find your financing, figure it out. So they start out with a building for $1 and subsidy from the state for supportive housing. Then the developer, for-profit or not-for-profit, goes out and finds the rest of the funds, whether they come from historic tax credits or low-income housing tax credits, investment, various other mechanisms to use to renovate the building to the standard it needs to be renovated. So there's not a penny coming from the GPP financing or the idea of it. This is a separate project. And Paul is right. This is 100% tied together as a press release because it was, what the phrase in the politics of it is, the low-hanging fruit. A building that was there kicking around. So let's go and do this. I've asked the question in 2 meetings now with ESD, and they said this is moving separately and not connected to the Penn Station redevelopment. And I was explicit. You know how I can be sometimes, Dave, really explicit.
I'm glad to hear that. And I have another question about the FAR. Do we know how much additional square footage increasing the FAR to 7.5 would allow? I'm just kind of wondering how that translates into a massing diagram. Let's say if we're talking about floors added to the laundry component.
Carrie, you said the building.
Yeah, I don't know I can't answer the math part of that.
I can kind of do that if you tell me again. You said the building's at a 6 FAR today?
Yeah.
And I think it's a 6 FAR with 100,000 square feet.
That's
so
right.
What is that?
Give me a moment to do some division. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, thanks.
In the meantime,
okay, while Joe's doing math, I did notice also that we talked about having the
Excuse me
RFP
on that.
responded.
Excuse me on that last point. It was also said that it was overbuilt. So
To 6.
if you increase the FAR and it's still overbuilt, then that doesn't increase any floor. Or am I not understanding that?
You're muted,
Joe,
Joe.
you're on mute.
The base FAR is 5, so it's overbuilt to 6 existing. However, there's a mechanism in the West Chelsea zoning district to increase it to 7.5. The state has said they will just allow an increase to 7.5. So that's why it could be added on to further, Marty, because it's overbuilt from the base zoning, but not the maximum zoning.
Right.
And the 7.5 it's not built up to the 7.5. So we need your math.
That's what I'm about to do.
It's 6.
Thank
It's
you.
built up to 6 and with 7.5 as the cap. David, did you want to have another comment, or should we go to Betty?
Yeah, one more comment, and it
Yeah.
has to do with having the terracotta restoration done by the RFP respondent. I would much rather see that handled by ESD before the project goes to the RFP respondent, because who knows how long it's going to be.
Yes.
I understand that ESD they have done a study that calls for replacing the terracotta with cast stone, which is really an inappropriate substitute material. And I'm just afraid that we'll have less control over what happens if it gets passed on to the RFP respondent. And I understand that Senator Hoylman's office is pressing for ESD to follow through with the replacement of the terracotta as soon as possible. So
That is correct.
yeah, I would
So
like
I think
to be,
we should have a letter to that effect for our next month's meeting to make sure that we're showing our support for Senator Hoylman's proposal to ESD that it is separated out and they must do that ASAP and not wait and let the developer do it.
okay, that's great. I would just like not for the other letter about Bayview to muddy the waters by suggesting that it'll be done by the RFP respondent.
So perhaps we can phrase that sentence in such a way that says we want to have it done now, but as a backup, I think that we should also have it that the developer must do it if ESD doesn't. Otherwise, it doesn't get done at all. So let us try to figure out a way to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't want to kind of give them a way out either. So we'll
Yes,
have to
but
think. We'll have to
otherwise,
think it through.
If we don't give the responsibility to anyone, then nobody, will take the responsibility to do it. So I think we have to make sure that we're covered and that we want ESD to do it now. That is our position. That is, our elected's position. But I think we use the RFP as a backup. Betty?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if you get a chance, I'd love to have that letter for next month. Or we can even maybe do it faster. Betty?
So I really support the points that we're making in the PowerPoint. I would like us to consider saying something about the rooftop space, perhaps as part of the community facility package, because it's a huge outdoor space, which I don't know, kids could have some soccer playing or running around or whatever. You rarely get outdoor space that is a big area like that, or of course, a garden. I have a concern about ESD and the RFP that I would somehow like us to say that we want to be included in a review of the draft of the RFP so we don't get screwed somehow. And then not for part of the letter, but as I said the last time at the full board, I do feel that more tours of the building should be done so more people understand what's in the building, because it's so extraordinary. That's it.
Thanks, Betty. Pamela?
About the terracotta plaques and the bullet points on that first page of bullet points. Can we see that again?
Yes. I can also send it to you.
Yeah, give me 1 second, I'll pull it up.
It's what was in the original presentation from Joe. It's just bullet pointed.
Yeah, I just wanted to see it and for people to be looking at it. I can't remember the exact which of the bullet points it was, but it refers to the terracotta, and it does not get specific enough, I don't think. Let's see.
It's next page, Jesse.
Yeah, next page. Great photos.
Thank you. Thank
Um,
Joe. Those are his photos.
Yeah. The first bullet point, it just says preservation, restoration, and maintenance of the brick and masonry facade, including multiple terracotta plaques. It doesn't, it needs to say including, it needs to say preservation, restoration, and maintenance. The restoration in kind of the terracotta plaques, that the material should be terracotta and not anything else. And it needs to get stated right there so that
We
it's.
should note the locations also where those plaques
Yeah,
are. So
that's
it's clear.
right. And it should be unequivocal. It shouldn't be any options, any way to opt out of doing it the right way. That was one point.
Okay, thanks. What's your next point?
Oh, I'll get there.
Oh, okay.
In our tour, at the end of the tour, the ESD lady was there, and we were in that last room at the ground floor. And at the last moment, I asked a question, which was, would they in their RFP, whenever they get responses, would there be any market rate, any discussion of market rate housing within that building? And she said that she could not rule that out. That was the way she phrased it, which stuck with me very severely.
So we're proposing in our last page that we just popped up to say no market rate. 100% affordable.
But she would not back away from that. She said, yeah, okay, we could do that.
She's
And
the
when I heard it,
technician. That's her
in my
job.
head, it just said, yeah, that's where they're going. So
She's the technician. That's her job. It's our job
Okay,
to say what we want and don't give up on it, period.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
What's the math?
So we're going to be very specific about that point.
So here is the back of the envelope analysis of this. Of the annex, that building is roughly 4,000 square foot floor plates. The additional FAR of 2.5. I'm sorry, not 2.5. I apologize. It's not 2.5. It's
1.5.
It's 1.5. I apologize.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Joe.
Yeah.
Tina.
I just had a question. At some point, the rear view or rear yard was mentioned. If that's the case, can someone describe what is the yard?
You mean
and
the
how it's-
courtyard?
Yeah.
So the building is shaped like it has a courtyard, but the courtyard is built. It's about 2 or 3 stories. So the other stories are well above it and look down on it when you're standing on the roof, say, or if you're on the 7th floor or 6th floor. So we are proposing that in order to maintain the light and air between the sides of the building that are above the courtyard, that we don't build the courtyard up.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And how would it be used, the courtyard? What is the idea?
Right now, I think that's where the pool and the gym are. They're below the roof of the courtyard. So it's not really a courtyard. It's not all the way to the ground. It's more, it's just lower floors than the rest of the building.
Right.
So what we don't want is for them to sort of fill in the middle.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is, do we have a proposed use for that space?
Yeah. I mean, that's technically, I think we have to wait and see how the developers' proposals come back, but that's where the pool is. And that's where the community space is that we would be wanting to use.
It's not a usable space, that roof, Tina. That's actually the roof of the facilities. And and all of the apartment windows look right onto it.
Right.
The usable space for a courtyard is the roof. That's where the real green
Right.
space would be.
All right.
So I think the word courtyard is probably not correct. Is it, Joe?
Yeah.
What's a better way to describe
light,
that?
light court.
Light court?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got the math.
Okay, let's hear it.
So 1.5 is roughly 25,000 additional square feet. The floor plate of the laundry building, that's the portion to the east, is roughly 4,000. So we're talking, it could accommodate another 6 floors maximum on top of that laundry building. And that's
Which is the
currently-
annex? Is that what you mean?
The annex, yes. The
Okay.
annex is we've been calling it the annex, but actually they were both built in
I
1931.
know.
And that's, we
Yeah.
got to get it out of our nomenclature because that's how we've referred to it for years.
Okay, so from now on, we'll call it the laundry building?
Yeah, it was the
Okay.
laundry for 18 YMCAs in the Bronx and Manhattan.
And the interesting little fact on that, Joe, that the laundry building, the floors don't align with the rest of the building.
Right.
Because it was built for floor to floor heights for a laundry, industrial laundry.
So could we circle back to the implications of that after others ask their questions?
6 floors.
On top of the existing 8 stories.
Sure. Pamela? Pamela's hand went down, or Pamela went down. I don't see her. So Viren will take your questions and comments, and I'm sure she'll be back. Oh, she's back.
And then just going back to Joe, facility use that we talked about, considering NYCHA youth, if there's a way to sort of include that language, that would be very, very helpful. And the second point is we have quite a few public schools in our district, so we should think about technology-based sort of community use for the high school youth.
That information will definitely be in the housing committee's response to this, because that came through very loud at the public hearing for the NYCHA youth and for the technology training, which I think is a great thing to tie in here.
Sounds good. And the very last thing, and I know I'm asking for too much, but can we ask them to not go to 7.5 FAR at all and just
Of
leave
course,
it as
Kate.
is?
Yes,
I'm just going to say, of course we can. And I'm going to ask everyone to stop talking about the FAR as they have put it out there, and instead say, if there's some sort of addition, what would we accept? So say that up front and set the parameters, let the FAR be backed into from there. Because it's a different way to look at it. That's all.
Sounds good, because if you keep that door open, you know they will come walking in right away.
They're not going to walk, they're going to run with a bulldozer.
Thanks, Viren. Bert?
Yeah, okay, so Joe, so we change our perspective and we say, we talk about not FAR, but we talk about certain square feet. Of the 25,000, we talk about 10 or 5, but the use of that square feet is still determined by what we're saying before.
Yes.
It's still housing. It's not market rate housing. It's still supportive housing or affordable housing. So
I would suggest that
I'm just want to throw this out. Again, I'm looking at this. What would be the objection of using another 25,000 square foot for affordable housing?
because, well, I'm sorry, I'm just going to give my opinion, I'll let it go. I would suggest.
I want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I would say using the phrase, a modest addition to the laundry portion of the building. I would say that. And I would also quantify it by saying 1 or 2 stories. The moment that we let the possible maximum FAR open at the door, those in the development community, just like the last project you were talking about, will seek to make this the biggest and highest you can do. I told you how many floors if it covered the full floor. The developer may come back and say, cover half the floor and build an additional 12 stories above it. And then the dog wags the tail that someone's looking to say, look, I can put market rate housing here, although the RFP doesn't say it, and save you, the state of New York, money. The more we refocus this back to, it's 100% affordable housing development that's funded by the state in the land and the subsidy, and then the developer knows that's the parameter, it cleans up the field and doesn't get people so excited, not the good ones, the ones that we always have trouble with, to say, let's get the highest and best. Isn't this beautiful glass tower designed by the architect of, France and Vietnam? Isn't that fantastic? And then someone at the state jumps onto that crap. And then we get in a battle about that as opposed to just the vanilla project of renovating and doing a modest addition and making an affordable housing building.
So that's why we added those 2 points. We don't want building on, through, or into and that it must be 100% affordable and no market rate housing, because, then suddenly I think we want to add that we only want, max 2 floors, 3 floors. Like, I don't know. All I know is that when ESD came to us to present this, they 100% said, they made a point of letting land use know that they had up to 7.5 FAR, and that, sorry for saying the bad word, and that they did not need any approval to override the zoning text amendment to get it. So
they need
that needs to be sort of, I think, for us on the table, and we need to decide what are we comfortable going back and saying. And, the 2 points that Jessica and I put forward, there may be more, but that's a start, right? Like, if you're going to build up, it's still going to be 100% affordable housing. If you are not permitted to build, or we do not think you should be permitted to build around the original structure, on the V, no through, no up, no around, we're only talking about the laundry building and then how high.
So let me just again note, that's what they say they can legally do. We're in a political process.
I hear you.
This is highly politicized, and I think we should respond. But we want as a community and lay it out. Here's our political line in the sand, because the truth is we are saying to them, bring us at least 30 beds of residential psychiatric housing. That's a huge thing for a community to say. And we should be able to say, if that happens, there are limits, just like that.
Great. What's the limit?
I would propose a modest addition of 1 to 2 stories.
I agree.
And then negotiate when you get down to a developer in the end, if something is really great, as opposed to a door open that someone comes back with 12. That's what scares me, just as a negotiator over the years on this.
Just a straw poll for the committee. Can I see a show of hands of who would support that? Okay. I'm Jessica. You had that was your support. Thanks. Okay, Dave, I just want to, is there anybody else who we haven't heard from yet, who wants to say something? Okay, Dave?
A 2-story addition sounds reasonable to me, and it's probably the sort of thing that could be added over the existing building, or might be, without having to sink new columns down and new foundations, which wouldn't be feasible. And it's also the sort of thing that wouldn't completely transform the building. You see a lot of glass and steel 1 or 2 story additions on top of masonry buildings in the area. And I think they work fine. I would say that we may be looking at more than adding 6 stories, given that you're allowed mechanical deductions. So if you got chases and elevators, those don't contribute to FAR, and we would probably want the addition to set back from the street face of the masonry building so that it's distinct. It may be that we could accept some extension over the front building, as long as it didn't get too close to the area where the roof kind of rises up and has a sort of a sculptural effect. The laundry section is actually relatively narrow. I'm just thinking to try to get as many beds in, but I'm not sure quite how we would put that into a letter. And before I sign off with that thought, I would like something in the letter stating that this project has nothing whatsoever to do with the general
GPP.
Project plan. Yes, I'd like that to be made very clear, so we're not, held to being beholden down the road.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Paul?
I just want, I was wavering on the support of this. I think if we're going to insist that no building goes over the non-laundry building part of the building, right? The jailhouse itself, and the state is saying they can go up to 7.5 FAR, and we limit that construction to on top of the laundry. As Joe points out, that could be 8 stories. I think Joe, you're right, would be smart to say, let's do 2 stories. I think they'll come back to us with 8 stories. and we have to then negotiate to like 4 stories or something. I think that it's going to be a battle, but I think it's going to depend on who the applicant is and what they look for. So I think you're right, Joe. Maybe we even rephrase the 8,000 square feet into an FAR number and say we don't want to exceed 6.5 FAR or something like that.
So are you commenting on the on, through, or sorry, I have to go.
Yeah, because we're saying don't build on or through, no
Right.
courtyard building, no building on top of the U shape.
Yeah.
You know, all of the additional FAR will go on to the annex. And as Dave points out, there is some capacity probably on the eastern edge of the jail portion of the building to maybe put some floors above that. But we're saying don't do
As
it.
you said, though, the floors don't match. So that's the problem, right? We've seen
But they
that in the
could-
last proposal.
Yeah, they could, but if they added on that eastern part of the U shape and had that attached to the base of the U shape and went up, right? It could be almost 2 separate additions. So they would go up in steps. There are ways also to align it internally, but I just want to be, I think it's going to be a hard line to walk, and I want to be careful about how we phrase that.
Okay. Joe, do you mind if we go to the community just to see if we have any comments there, and then we can come back to the committee? Jesse, do we?
We do now. There we go. Hold on one
We
second.
have it.
Bringing over Stanford Miller now. Sanford Miller, I apologize. I put a T in there.
Sanford, are you there? You need to unmute.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sometimes I get trouble with that. Yeah, I just wanted to say that in the discussion about the FAR, I do think it's important that, well, at least what we hope would go here would be permanently affordable and or supportive housing. I think for a market rate development, like the trade-off vis-a-vis like historical integrity and whatnot is more stark, but to me, the value of getting permanently affordable and supportive housing is very high. And I would be quite reluctant to curtail that in the name of staying under some amount of square footage. And I don't know like what exact stipulation should be made to make sure that any addition to the laundry building is as neighborhood appropriate as possible. I don't know exactly how to stipulate that in terms of architectural terms, but I would be pretty reluctant to say, don't use all the space available. If all that 7.5 FAR is going to be used for permanently supportive and affordable housing, I'd be pretty reluctant to say, don't use that full FAR.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent comment. Thank you. I think that's what we're sort of trying to walk the line of saying, if you want to build higher, it must be supportive and affordable housing. And then we can set a limit, but then they'll probably come back with a different limit, and then we'll have to start negotiating. Hopefully that would be the best case scenario. So
yeah,
I think we're in agreement.
I worry a little bit about like, if you start with 2 and then someone says, okay, I'm going to build 2, I don't want to deal with this. Now we only have 2 floors of affordable housing or something like that.
Yes.
So I agree, if it's market rate, it's a different
Understood.
conversation, but I think if it's affordable, I don't know if we want to start with this like oppositional attitude from the start for something that where the purpose of the building is supposed to be something that's like for the benefit of the community.
Yes, thank you. I guess that's it from the community. Joe?
Yeah, so I go to the issue. I know for a fact, given this structure of this building, 2 floors can be built without any additional structure, period. 2 full floors of what's called lightweight framing. You could build more with some additional structure, but I also just caution the committee and the public, we're not going to solve every housing problem with this location. And when we try to do that, then we create projects that are unwieldy and are difficult to manage in the financing. Additions are expensive. And one of the ways I keep pushing this from the housing committee end is this project has so much freight on it to begin with. It has a pool and a gym and an industrial kitchen. We're putting psychiatric beds and affordable housing. We can do multiple things, but it's feasibility that's always going to smack us in the face. And what happens then is someone will come back and say, do the most to get what you want. 2 points I wanted to make for the committee. We're going to bring up at housing. First, we're going to ask our elected officials of the state. They need to contribute some money here for the pool and the gym and the kitchen, because that is a hard freight for an affordable housing developer to manage. So we need additional state money from our electeds. And I think it's okay if we ask for additional money, because that's how these projects that are so complex get done. Last piece is historic tax credits will be used most likely as a source of financing, and limiting additions gives you a much better ability to get an approval for historic tax credits. The rules don't allow unrestricted additions. And that's why certainly confining it to one section of the building is very helpful. And then talking about how much is helpful too. And that's the sort of underlying like strategies I'm thinking about as we're talking about it in housing.
Thanks, Joe. Pamela?
This is going to sound really frivolous, but I think we need a break. I don't know who came up with the name Bayview Chelsea. They didn't ask me about a name change, but I would recommend either Riverview Chelsea, since that is a river out there, not a bay, or Hudson Chelsea, since that's the name of the river. If they want to, and I would want to, remove the stigma of Bayview, I think it would be highly recommended to do that. I don't know how we go about making that proposal, since they seem to have already made a determination that it's going to be called Bayview Chelsea. Joe?
We rebranded it in housing to try to get it to say Chelsea in it. Come up with ideas. We should figure it out all together.
Okay, well, I vote for Riverview. Riverview Chelsea.
How about Chelsea View?
Why not? Anything but Bayview. Thanks.
Thanks, Pamela. Paul?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Two other questions, actually. Joe, in terms of supportive housing facilities, don't we often talk about the maximum number of beds because it makes it inefficient and it makes it unruly, and it makes it, so maybe using some of our own HHS language on the number of beds in a facility as a maximum to help restrict.
Well, one of the things we have to make clear that part of the quote beds are actually rent stabilized apartments. So we have to be careful the nomenclature, because part of it's the real permanent stuff versus the psychiatric component, which is a program without a lease. We have to say that in a way. So I think we're going to craft that heavily, Paul. I think you're right. We got to say it in the right way.
Yeah, I'm just still struggling with the language on how to get more. How do we get more affordable housing units but not have a big glass tower? And the second thing that I haven't been in the building in many years, but some of you have been, and nobody's been mentioning the entry foyer. As I recall, that corner entrance, there was a kind of a grand entry foyer. Is it still there? Is it worth mentioning? Is it something we should be talking about?
We should note that in the pool mosaics we missed, because those pool mosaics are original and extant.
Yeah, pool mosaics are critical. I thought when you talked about keeping the pool, that was what was implied. But yeah,
but it is implied. But we can be more specific about that. Yeah,
the pool mosaics.
I believe the entranceway is also named, but we can be more explicit about that as well.
Thank you.
Last word, Dave?
Yeah, with regard to the FAR, that's kind of one side of zoning. The other side is a building envelope, a zoning envelope. And I'm wondering if we might not want to suggest an envelope where, say, there's a 10-foot setback or whatever makes sense to us from 20th Street, and maybe a 24-foot height limit above the roof, and then a certain extension from east to west, from the east property line that the addition could occupy. And I think that would give us the kind of result that we're hoping for, as opposed to relying on FAR. Does that sound like something we might be able to reasonably include?
West Chelsea zoning is full of height limits and base limits and setbacks. So I think we better, maybe this committee, Carrie, you and Jessica can subsequent to this meeting, look at the various requirements that exist today
Yeah.
in those zones D and
E.
E,
Yeah.
right? And David, you're right. I think jump off from whatever those limits are to help reinforce those limits. And then a setback, certainly, because it's historic building. You're right about that. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Let me jump in here, if I may. Bill Borak has been contacting me. He says that has his hand up and nobody's paying attention.
He's being paid attention to. We're just letting you guys finish your conversation
I
first.
see. Okay, I just wanted to make sure he has his shot.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jesse. You want to bring Bill over?
While you're bringing him over, I'd want to mention that it's an estuary down here. Oh, well.
Of course, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Martin. I don't think the word estuary will
I don't think
fit.
it's the Chelsea estuary housing, cripes.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
Hudson River estuary housing.
Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome.
Well, the Siemens Center.
Bill,
I don't
Bill,
know.
you have to accept when I promote you to panelist, you have to accept. There we go.
And now you're muted, Bill, but if you unmute, you just need to unmute. So we can't hear you, Bill, because you have, I think your mute button is on. It's in the lower left, a little microphone. Pamela, are you communicating with Bill?
She's on mute too.
So maybe while we're waiting, I can start to review some of what I've heard. Does that sound good to everybody?
Very good.
So the terracotta plaques, David, we should, we are going,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Thank you very
Go
much.
ahead, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say I'm speaking for the Council of Chelsea Block Association. My new title of President Emeritus after 34 years being president, and also for Save Chelsea. We're glad to hear that the Bayview will be completely separate from ESD. One of the questions I have is, when you talk about the 1,800 units, are those units possibly going to be part of the towers, what I call the Towers of Babel, where they want to destroy hundreds of businesses and residents? Where would those 1,800 units go?
Sorry, are you talking about the Penn Station redevelopment project? And
Yes, that's what I'm
1,800
talking
units?
about. That.
Yeah, so we're talking about Bayview, Chelsea, potentially to be renamed.
Yeah, but
We have
you're not going to
101,
put. You're not going to.
115.
Excuse me. You're not
Mhm.
going to put 1,800 units in Bayview, correct?
No, absolutely not.
So where are those 1,800 units going to go?
I don't know. This is a separate project.
Right, and is ESD the one promising the 1,800 units?
I honestly don't know about the 1,800 units because we're just talking about 118 units. And
Okay, then I
plus
would
30
like it made
units.
clear, make clear that if down the road, there's no strings attached, that if they say the 1,800 units will be in those towers that they want to build, that those are separate and apart from CB4, and that would be in CB5's territory.
I believe the Penn Station redevelopment project has one block in, Paul, help me, in CB4.
Right, just one block.
Mm.
So again, I'm just, repeating, it was great to hear that it's completely separate. That's what Save Chelsea and CCB wanted. But there was the concern about where those 1,800 units that you talked about would go. And we just didn't want them going into CB5's area where those towers are going to be built. So just want to make that clear. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to review quickly what I heard. I think the terracotta plaques, in my personal opinion, should be a separate issue as well as in this RFP, to make sure that we are pursuing everything we can to get them done now, to get them fixed and or restored, as well as make sure that the developer, at least if all else fails, the developer has a responsibility to restore. That's what I think, so that's what I would propose. The rooftop space, we can make a point of including a comment about, how it would be used potentially as a garden. I do want to just call out that it seems as though the mechanicals may have to now be moved up to the roof because it's in the flood zone. So some of that rooftop space will be used for that, but that doesn't mean we can't still push for, creating part of the community center on the roof or something. So that point. And in kind to the terracotta, sorry, forgot, they must be terracotta. NYCHA Youth Public Schools technology-based training as part of the community center use. A modest addition to the laundry building, 1 to 2 stories set back from the street face. Separately, I think we're going to discuss a name change, the pool mosaics, plus the entryway, being more specific about the historic nature of that and what we want to preserve. And then we will look into zoning envelopes and what that means for, David, you can help me and Jessica with that a little bit, maybe after, on just doing some research there. Did I cover everything?
Maybe I missed it. Did you have the chapel included in that?
The chapel's in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So do we have to vote on writing a letter or we just write the letter? Sorry.
No, you're voting on the consensus of the items in the letter.
Okay.
Housing is going to do the same thing on their end. And then I think really what the thing is, I think we have to think about, and this is really more just for Carrie and Joe and Jessica and Maria, is what you're presenting at exec. Because I suppose you might not have a full-blown letter at exec, but you would want some sort of outline.
We should have all the points in an outline so we can then draft it.
I think an outline would
letter.
I think an outline would be sufficient to give you guys time that would give you enough for exec to work off of, and then you would then spend that week to get the letter ready for the next.
Well, so the bullet points that we went through tonight, plus the additional comments that I just listed off, seem to be forming some kind of an outline.
Yeah, I think you're on your way for sure.
Okay, so
did we all, maybe did I miss it? Did we? Oh, I wasn't listening. Did we say something about the independence of this project from anything else?
No, excellent point. That and we need to state that this
clearly
is separate from the Penn Station redevelopment project GPP. Thank you for that. Is there a motion or consensus?
I make a motion.
Thanks, Viren.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Present not eligible? Abstaining? Okay, Brad, I am assuming you're in favor. Yay, unanimous. All right. Thank you. So, I mean, it's really late and there's a little bit of things to report on, but nothing major, some meetings. We went before LPC on 458 West 20th. If you remember the building that had AC louvers all over the place and that we found the old photo for, or they found the old photo for. And interestingly enough, the LPC ruled that the louvers could be placed under the windows, but they had to put back the middle column of bricked up windows and sills and lintels. So you never know. Yeah. Public bathroom task force meeting with CB1. We moved this agenda item to next month because we had so much to do, but we will be discussing it then. Paul will be helping out with that as it came before Clinton Hell's Kitchen land use. So look out for that information. And they had, Joe, I'm glad you're here because maybe you can speak to this for a second. This is the last point, but there was a meeting with Related on the update of the status of 500 West 28th Street.
Yeah, this is the illegal demolition at 500 West 28th Street, where the whole building was demolished before we noticed it. Related had an agreement HPD compelled them to restore the building and rebuild it because they used the development rights and transferred them to the Zaha Hadid condo next door. I've said that a number of times. And that meant there was no development rights left to rebuild the building, which forced them to purchase those development rights from the West Chelsea Affordable Housing Fund for approximately 1.9 million. So we're getting not only a building restored, we're getting 1.9 million contribution for affordable housing, and 4 of the 6 units must be made permanently affordable. All this was set and ready to go. And that was the fall of 2019. And then we had a little COVID thing that happened and it entirely got lost. HPD did not have attorneys to deal with it. Our council member, we brought this to him as part of our affordable housing plan. We brought Related to the table, and we are talking about getting this resumed again because they actually had a draft regulatory agreement to govern the whole process. And if Jesse can, Jesse should know, I want to give Jesse kudos here. When Related went to make the payment as part of this agreement, they couldn't make it because HPD had not opened the bank account to accept money for the West Chelsea Affordable Housing Fund. We got that settled, and then the world dropped apart with COVID. So we're restarting this whole process, and I'm going to say it's going to take a good probably 8 to 9 months to get the thing signed, and then they'll actually be able to build a building. We'll get affordable housing in it, and we'll get the 1.9 million.
Thanks, Joe. It was an education for me to sit through the meeting, knowing nothing and feeling rather dumb. So thank you. Do we really have questions on this now? Or do we want to wait until it's a thing?
I just have one clarification. This is one word.
Okay.
So when you say restoration, if I'm not mistaken, it's an empty lot right now.
The building must be.
There's nothing to restore.
The Related came to the housing committee back in 2019 with a full set of plans to rebuild the building very close to what it was. And we reviewed, gave them comments, and they made changes. So there will be a 4-story building looking like that, which was there, because it all fits in with the zoning. So yes, it is a restoration.
And what was the square footage? What was the TDR price?
Whatever we had agreed. In other words, it's the number that we got them to agree to in the West Chelsea.
All right. I was hoping they paid more than that, so we could start using that number.
Not to make beleaguer this, but jumping back to whatever it was, 2019, 2018, they dragged their feet because they wanted to see what prices were going to end up being the cheapest, and so they finally just paid into the fund because it just was in a
they didn't pay in because they can't make a transaction, but they've agreed to do it.
They agreed to pay in. That was where they were.
And it's the number that we fought for as part of the whole change at the end there. We got that number. That was Lee Compton working on that.
Brad?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Years ago, we approved the renovation at 25th and 10th, right on the corner there, across the kitty corner from Avenues. And I'm just wondering what's happening with that building. I know Joe might know something about it.
Clinton Housing Clinton Housing has that building, and the city of New York, HPD, has held up that and 3 others for the past 5 years. I just got a call today before this meeting, before the meeting started quite a while ago, from the borough president. They are now putting that building as part of their affordable housing plan with a bunch of other buildings. And they wanted to know if we would like their support. I said, yes, it's in our affordable housing plan anyway. So yes, we'd like your support. They're going to make a big announcement, Brad, in 2 weeks on that.
Wow, Joe, talk about having an answer. Thank you, big guy.
Yeah. Joe, you're going to have to guest star at every meeting.
Fantastic. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Joe, for coming. Thanks, Jesse, for everything. Thanks, committee, for being awesome. And thanks for everyone in the community who showed up tonight. Hope you
And
guys
feel
have a
better.
wonderful month.
And feel
Jessica,
better.
feel
Feel better,
better.
Jessica.
Yes, feel
Jessica,
better.
yes.
Carrie,
Carrie
thanks
did
for
a great job.
facilitating.
Great
You did
job.
very well.
Thank
I'm
you.
very
Thank you,
tired
everybody.
of talking, so
Did very
I'm
well,
going
Carrie.
to thank
Yeah,
you.
great
And
job.
oh, sorry, one quick thing before anyone else hangs up. We have, like I mentioned, a number of letters to write. So I might be reaching out, or we might be reaching out to a couple people to help, please, this month. It's fun. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you,
Bye,
Carrie.
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay.